Hi there, welcome, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Jason Scholder, and this is Learning to Fail. People are complicated. I know a lot of complicated people. My guest today is Scott Peterson. I always thought my life was challenging. Then I met Scott. We've been friends for over 20 years, with a 13-year break. Reconnecting after all this time was not only healing, but joyful. This was one of the most honest conversations we've ever had. I'm glad we recorded it. Before we get started, I just want to say how much I appreciate people taking time out of their lives to talk to me, let alone listen. This podcast is my avenue for expanding the way I think and the things I think about. If you like what you hear, please tell your friends about Learning to Fail and encourage them to tell theirs. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes and check out our website for additional information about each of the people we interview. While you're there, please visit our Donate and Amazon pages. Each page will give you clear instructions on what to do. For the time being, we're a completely donation-based podcast, so all of our episodes are being brought to you by you. Our donation page will allow you to make one-time or recurring donations. Our Amazon portal enables you to support the podcast without spending any extra money of your own. Please bookmark our Amazon page and start your shopping there every time you visit or buy anything on Amazon. The most helpful thing you can do is simply to listen to the podcast and encourage others to do the same. The world will be a better place when we can all start learning to fail together. Let's talk to Scott Peterson. I can't remember the last time I laughed this hard. Scott Peterson, thank you for joining me on Learning to Fail.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm an expert.
Well, that wasn't why I reached out to you, but when you mentioned it, I thought, well, Scott's had so many different incarnations this lifetime.
That's what my point I was going to make. I'm 64 years old, and about every 5 years I do something different.
Well, I do something different every 10 years, so I think that maybe we just have that sort of similar kindred spirit that there's not one thing that's going to satisfy us forever.
Yeah, or character flaw, if you want to put it that way.
Well, I'd rather not see it that way, but that doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah, well, there's so many ways of being. That's one of the things that I've actually succeeded at, is becoming just comfortable in my own skin a lot more. If things didn't go right before, I would blame myself, beat myself up, blah, 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 blah. And then I realized so much of what's gone on in my life had nothing to do with me. So,
When did that change take place, do you think?
Oh, let's see. After this last go-around, when I got evicted and was living in my van, it was entirely because of the perfect storm of an arthritic hip, a profession that required me to be physical, a recession, and a landlord who wanted me out of there so he could raise the rent on the apartment. So it was like, well, what am I going to do about that? So, I just decided that that's the way it is. So, make the best of it.
I mean, one of the things that's always sort of blown me away about you, and just it's confusing and confounding, but you're one of the smartest people I know. I mean, you've got an incredible education. I mean, every time I have a conversation with you, I feel like I learn something, and then sometimes I'm made to feel that I'm learning something. And
you don't know that yet. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. There have been a few of those along the way. But it's just, I mean, I guess it just makes me think about like how many things have to line up for things to go right, or I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know what the magic is. I mean, some people's lives, I have a former relative and one of George's brothers. I mean, the guy's got the Midas touch. Everything he does turns to gold.
Yeah, I know people like that too.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Well, I think it's a worldview or a way of being in the world that wasn't vouchsafed to me at birth. Um, I know I'm a pretty smart guy. The way I put it is I got a mind like fly paper. Everything sticks to it in no particular order. Um, and I can use a lot of what I know, but a lot of what I know is just there because I like it. The idea of focusing that into a laser beam and putting it to work, making money or in a profession. Yeah, when I was in theater, yeah. When I was writing comedy, yeah. But it never. What can I say? There was no stamina to it. It wore out fast, and then I'm on to the next thing, or I get fired, or whatever I'm doing stops, and then I'm on to the next thing. So yeah, it's a mystery to me too. I look around and say, well, geez, that guy, he fall into a toilet and come up with mince pies under each arm.
That's a horrifying image in the best of times.
That's from Mice and Men.
Oh my goodness. I had a guy on the most recent recording. This is our second episode. And on the first episode, he's also happens to be a woodworker. We'll get into how you and I met in a little while, but he's just like an unbelievable master woodworker. His name's Andy Ray. You may even know him because he's written a number of books and I don't know how many hundreds of articles and edited Woodworker magazine or one of those for a long time. And right now he's out of work. And I mean, he's as good as they come. I mean, the stuff he builds is so unbelievably beautiful. And there's just his first job was working for George Nagasaki. Am I saying his name right?
Nagasaki?
Like
the city? Like the city?
No. Nakashima.
Oh, Nakashima.
Yeah, the furniture maker.
And
yeah, sorry I didn't get that name right. And that was his first job, was working in his, being his finisher. And then, so he really got to be around some of the finest furniture ever. And now he's got his own thing going. I mean, it's been a long road for him. And the other day, he's been spending some of the last week working outside, milling trees down into, lumber with like a chainsaw, mill. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, and it just kind of, and he's making not nearly what he's worth. It reminded me of the time that you were helping to pull pine boards out of that Sears building in downtown LA.
The pine mine.
Yeah, the pine mine, right. Because I'm actually sitting at a table right now that is made from that wood. And the table downstairs where we were recording yesterday is also made from that wood. I made about 8 or 10 tables before I left LA. Sofa tables and end tables and a couple of desks.
I had a whole living room suite and dining room suite. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to that stuff?
It disappeared somewhere along the line. In one of my the place I built it for, the guy sold it, so the landlady built an apartment building there. One of those things. It's like, okay, here I have this wonderful. It was a nice little house too, as you recall. Really sweet little Spanish style house in North Hollywood. Roses along the back wall, really comfortable. And I got to live there for a year until they threw me out. So it's like, okay, I failed at that. The whole thing about the periodicity of work, what can I say, is that it's so often out of your control. You can be the best buggy whip maker in the world, and then the Model T comes along, and 5 years later, you're pulling weeds for somebody's garden. So there's just so many things that can happen and do happen to people that I think we need to be taught a little bit different about how to look at that. When I was growing up, it was like hard work and dedication it'll make your life the way it ought to be, and that's just an outright lie.
Right.
It can make your life the way it ought to be, but there's no freaking guarantee. So, if we're all taught to be a little more gentle to ourselves, I think we'd be more gentle to each other, and easing each other through the tough spots would be a little easier. If you hear thumps, it's because I'm in a in the back room of my friend's recording studio, and there's a restaurant next door, and they sometimes bleed through the walls.
Well, no problem. I mean, we're not trying to make these things perfect. We just want them to be as good as they can be. You know, just avoid the obvious things like the fucking HVAC system. So,
the HVAC system you used to fuck with?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. The fucking HVAC.
Yeah,
the regular HVAC system. No, we're fine with it.
That reminds me of I don't know if it's a great joke. I'll tell it and we can decide. But there's this Jewish family, and they need to put their father in a nursing home, and all the Jewish nursing homes are full, so they put him in a Catholic nursing home. And they're very concerned that he's not going to be happy there, but they've run out of choices, and he can't live with any of them. So they leave him there for like a month, and when they come back, they check on him, and he's just never been happier. And they say, well, you know, how's it going? He said, oh, I love this place. It's fantastic. And they said, really? He said, yes. You see that man over there? He hasn't practiced medicine in 20 years, and they still call him doctor. And that man over there, he was a conductor, and he hasn't conducted an orchestra in 30 years, and they still call him maestro. He says, me, I haven't had sex in 40 years, and they still call me the fucking Jew.
You got to do that in a shtetl accent.
I know. I couldn't summon it, and I didn't want it to come on halfway.
You see that man over there?
There, yeah. Well, you can retell it. So
that's pretty good. The fucking Jew.
They all call me the fucking Jew. I screwed it up.
They all call me still the fucking Jew. Oh, you give up.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, that's good. You know, we should all have our titles in our age.
What would yours be?
Oh God.
Okay, what would mine be?
Well, we have to really make our acquaintance a little longer before I could figure that one out.
All right. Well, I have all the confidence you'll come up with something all too accurate and painful.
Oh, I didn't hurt your fifis, did I?
Oh well, you know, there might have been a time or two. Not so badly that I didn't call you again.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, we did have some time away, you know.
Yeah, 12 and a half years. Astonishing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, being out of LA, I've been out of contact with a lot of people. But I felt like a year or so before I left LA, we just sort of...
Oh, yeah, well, you used to have a lot of rules. Do you still have a lot of rules?
I probably do. You know, I mean, the thing is, I don't recognize it because I follow them anyway.
Well, you had a lot of rules, and you used to travel a lot. And I said, "Where'd you go this time?" And then you got a little snippy with me and said, "I'm so tired of people asking me where I'm going." And for some reason or other, it set me off, and I just said, "Fuck off." And I think that was the last time we spoke. So it was as much me as you.
Yeah, you know what it was? And I can tell you, I remember that. I think I had asked you to take care of my dog while I was gone. You're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'd rather not talk about it. And you're like, well, then fuck off. I'm not going to take your dog if you're not telling me where you're going. And I can tell you.
No, you didn't ask me to take your dog. That wasn't part of it.
Oh, that wasn't?
No,
well, maybe it was going to be.
It was just a
But I was like, well, he just told me to fuck off. I wonder if it's a bad time to bring up the dog.
Perspicacious lad.
I remember what it was. I was in a relationship, actually a really wonderful one. It wasn't really public because we were in the same spiritual community and we have a lot of the same friends, and we had just kind of decided that the relationship would be a little bit ours and a little bit private, and it was still kind of new.
On the DL.
Yeah, it was a little on the DL. I mean, it was still a new relationship. And so I remember, you know, I was just not really talking to anybody about it.
You could have just said that.
I know, dude. Obviously, I could have handled it 100 ways better than I did.
Well, so could I have. You know, it was, you know, there's a character flaw that's led to my fairly abrupt exit from certain situations that I get really impatient really fast sometimes, and it just blows over and I mouth off and then boom, I'm gone. So yeah, you know, put yourself in line. You're one of the pearls on the necklace that I've strung around my neck.
Oh, your own neck that you're gonna hang yourself by one day.
that's been weighing me down.
Well, I want to take this moment to apologize for being that way. I want you to tell me more about the rules thing, because that's come up in other relationships, and I have every comfort with including that as a part of these conversations. Like, this podcast is an intimate thing. It's especially the first 10 people I'm talking to are people who are friends of mine. They've known me for a long time. They care about me. I care about them. There's been a lot of water under the bridge, but there's some kind of love there that exists either way, in spite of whatever we've been through. And you're very much on that list, so it's awesome that you were up for doing this. And so, I really do apologize for handling my side of that badly.
Oh, don't worry about it. I mean, I could have said to you, why are you being such a shit? As opposed to just fuck off.
Yeah. There were so many other expletives you could have chosen.
Yes.
You went with fuck off, but there was why are you being such a shit? God, you're an asshole. Let's see, what else is there?
Blow it out your ass.
Blow it out your ass. I mean, that's a lot like God, you're an asshole, but it's got its own ring.
Yeah, but I think I hung up too. So, and I was kind of impatient with that dynamic in your personality. When you had the shop, there was, you charged me for the nuts and bolts. I surcharged for nails and screws.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did. You tried to, but I pitched a mighty bitch and you took it off the bill. Yeah, and it was just like you were a little uptight about your prerogatives. That's all. Now I'm the opposite. I'm real loosey goosey about that stuff. So to me, it's something to put up with. And I've learned to respect it in other people because other people have that dynamic. But at that time, it was still like, well, why are you like that? Which is probably what led to the fuck off.
Right. I can remember another side of it, and I before I say it, I just want to say, like, this whole conversation, or this part of this conversation, I don't think the whole thing's going to be like this, is not in any way designed to provoke old negative emotions. So
No. We've gotten over that.
Yeah. So good. Well, I just wanted to say that before I said what I'm going to say next. Because I'm thinking about, like, well, why would I have charged for the bolts and screws, And I can remember feeling a little bit like a somewhere between a pawn shop and an ATM for you. Like, I remember loaning you a lot of money off and on, and you always paid me back, and sometimes you insisted on paying me with interest, which wasn't really my desire. I mean, I wasn't trying to make money off of loaning you money. I mean, if I could help you, I would help you. That was always my feeling. But I remember feeling like there was a lot of it.
Well, there was. Yeah, there was. And one of the reasons I insist on paying interest is because I didn't want you to think I was sponging off your goodwill. At the time, it was pretty desperate times. It was the middle of the last recession where construction went into the toilet, and I was pretty much hurting. There was some desperate times there. So yeah, and I was yeah, I can see how you would get impatient with that. So yeah, circumstances led to that. And you laid down the law too. You said no more. And so, I found another avenue to save my life with. And I always pay people back. So, yeah, just, what can I say? One of those things.
Yeah. Well, it was never a question of thinking I wouldn't be paid back. Although I guess there was probably a piece of me that was like, well, one day he's just not going to be able to pay me back. There might have been that. And it's not like I had money to burn. I mean, I was living on credit. I mean, I remember at the time, balance transfers were free. This was when interest was free and balance transfers were free. And I financed that entire shop 100% on my good credit. And I built up my credit lines to be like $30,000 a piece. I had 10 credit cards. I floated $100,000 of debt for 9 years.
Holy shit.
And I never paid a dime of interest, never a single processing fee, nothing, because the credit cards were in such competition with each other for to loan you money at that time.
Right.
So I was not operating on a surplus by any stretch.
You weren't exactly liquid.
Yeah, I was,
Yeah.
I was dry ice at best. It was all smoke, sort of
Smoking.
mist,
Yeah, right.
and
Well, yeah, well, that's how you got to have that good shop, is that you had the credit, and at that point my credit was obliterated. So, it was just reaching out where I could reach out.
yeah,
Survivalist mode. But yeah, you had a right to think that. I mean, I would have thought that too if I were on the other end of it.
yeah. I mean,
It's uncomfortable.
it was uncomfortable, and it wasn't showing any sign of letting up.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
it was a
neither
little
was.
bit of a bottomless.
A never-ending cycle.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, an infinite loop.
an infinite loop. Yes, it was Apple and Cupertino. Um,
I wish I was out.
yeah, yeah. Then you wouldn't. I'd be borrowing money from you.
Yeah, shit. I'd be raining money down on everybody I know.
I'll never forget. At one point, I think when I'd started 3 Minute Egg, which is my yoga company now, and I was looking for a lot of startup capital from different people, and I went to LA and I met with a friend of mine who had really made it in Hollywood. And I'm deliberately not saying who it is for now. And
okay.
And yeah, so fuck you. You're gonna hang up now? What?
Read my mind.
Who is it? Can't tell you.
Yeah. Oh, hang on a second. Okay. The screensaver went on for some reason, so I'm back to looking at the trace. So yeah, you went to where the money is.
So I went to talk to this friend of mine, and he ended up asking me for money. Like, his life had changed dramatically. He'd gotten divorced. I didn't know about it, and I was there at his wedding. I was the first person to speak. Not that anyone asked me, but I got up and grabbed the mic. And I mean, he's one of my best friends, and then I guess that was early in the Facebook days. I didn't really pay attention to Facebook. I had it, but I didn't really use it. And then he told me he was divorced, and I was devastated. And he's like, "Well, dude, it's been like a year. It's on Facebook." I mean, I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know that." So he was going through a rough time, and that was the last time I ever approached anybody personally.
Yeah.
For money in that way. Like, I mean, unless I knew they had it, but not like sort of setting up a meeting. I mean, definitely wanting to catch up, but also having an agenda, and then finding out I was actually going to be on the other end of it was pretty funny.
You were in the crosshairs, not him.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it was really one of those Hollywood lessons too, where you're, everyone wants something from everyone, apparently.
Yeah. Well, that's the way of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, when the Scott's VO booth started to gain some steam, gain a little momentum, I decided the thing that I was going to do is pay back debt. So I must have paid off 15-20 grand worth of debt in 1 year. And I still haven't touched it all, but I'm close to the end of the more recent stuff. I mean, the stuff from maybe 10 years ago is ancient history. They can, find it in cuneiform when the architects dig it up. Because it weighs on my conscience. I mean, it weighs on my soul a little bit. I don't like to be looking in the mirror and going, I'm not a free man because I've owed this for so long. And no one's bothering me for it. When I had my hip repaired, the second hip repaired 3 years ago, that was after 3 years of needing it. And it was for the same reason as the delay on the first hip replacement, was that my copay was like $4,000 or $5,000, and it was the middle of a recession, and I wasn't working enough. And my buddy John fronted it. He just said, "Here, get your hip repaired," and so he's going to be the next one. But then things have been a little bit sparse the last month or so. So I'm in maintenance mode on that. But yeah, money's tough. I mean, money always comes into it, one way or the other. between people. But it can be poisonous. It can be really poisonous.
Yeah, I think there's like I guess when it all flows one way too, can be a piece of it.
Oh yeah.
And but I guess just we can move on past that probably.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
we beat this one to death.
But it's an important piece because it's relevant to the whole, what this is about in a way. Like, we go through these different phases, and things are rough and things get better and you do strike me, always have struck me as someone with a lot of integrity, and so it's appreciated to hear you talk about, you're paying these people back. You could not, I mean, it's not like you're living high and you're paying them back. I envision, I mean, what are you doing now? Are you still living in your car? Or
No, I'm actually trapped in the poverty cycle of paying too much for my necessities to be able to pay for cheaper necessities. You understand? I'm living in a motel right now. It's a decent room, but it's like $1,300 a month. That's a 2-bedroom apartment up in the valley. But I don't have enough for a down payment because I've been paying off the debt, and I'm renting a rent-a-wreck truck again for the last couple of years. And between the two of them, that's $25,000 a year. But I don't have the $3 or $4 grand in one spot to be able to put a down payment on a truck, or to put down on a decent apartment. And plus, with the last recession, my credit was incinerated again. So, if I could even get a car loan, who knows? I'm gonna have to get someone to co-sign for me. But those are details. Those are things you work out. And at this time, I'm just sort of waiting it out. Letting the money roll in when it rolls in and paying it out as it goes, and finally it'll be done, and I can use that money for my benefit. So, I'm building from scratch at retirement age, put it that way.
So you're voting for Trump, I take it?
Yeah. He's gonna kick the asses of these goddamn Mexicans who are taking my. No, wait, I'm hiring them for. No, take it back.
Not voting for him.
No. No, it's Bernie all the way.
Bernie, I know. It would be a really fascinating world if he wins.
I think he's gonna.
He's got a real chance.
Yeah, he really, really does. It'll shake out into, maybe someone rattles a skeleton in his closet we didn't know about, and it might burst the bubble, or dirty politics, or if he gets in a private plane in Michigan, who knows?
Right. Yeah. No, I know. It's
they can Wellstone him.
Yeah. That's a crazy thing. We're going to try not to get too much into politics on this show, just because it can't help but go to a dark place. But
welcome to dark places.
What did I want to ask you?
Oh, before I forget,
yeah.
Whatever happened to your little Aussie dog?
Oh, she died a few years ago.
Oh yeah, she was probably pretty old.
She was not old enough. Yeah.
What was her name?
Her name was Bodie.
Bodie, right?
Yeah.
Right.
She was the best dog in the world. And
I remember coming to visit you at the shop and sitting in your chair, and she would just eat me.
Yeah, she would love up on you pretty hard if you let her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a visual memory of her doing that with you too, and you just eating it up and
oh yeah,
her loving that fact. And she was a really delightful animal. I mean, when I had a kid, she became a lot less important. I think it was Melissa Etheridge or someone like that who said, when you have children, dogs are your life. They're like your kids. But when you have kids, dogs become dogs.
Uh-huh. Yeah, sure.
And I actually had 2 dogs, plus when Georgia moved in, she had a dog. And my second dog, Sasha, was just the bottom of the heap. Bodie used to terrorize her, and I mean, she drew blood a few times, and Sasha would ask for it. Sasha would pounce on Bodie, and then Bodie would pin her down pretty hard. Sasha developed this blood-curdling scream that oftentimes nothing was happening to her, but it was, like, I'm dying over here. I had people almost want to report me to the animal control because one of my dogs seemed so much so vicious to my other dog. But and then Georgia had this big, beautiful Belgian Malamute, and and he was just as docile and friendly and sort of noble as can be. And so he and Bodhi were about the same age, and male and female, they didn't have any problems. So I gave Sasha to one of my best friends. He had just gotten married, and he was visiting, and he and his wife were here in town shortly after their wedding, and I was like, you guys, they were looking for a dog. I said, you should take Sasha, because she's dying here, like she's just having the worst life. And they're like, well, we don't know if we're gonna like her. We don't want to bring hard feelings. I said, hey, if you don't bond with her, you don't have to take her. And his wife was literally on the floor with Sasha for about 45 seconds before she decided to take that dog. So, and then that night, Bodhi almost died because she'd run out from the yard and eaten some poison or something, and they were afraid then I wasn't going to give them Sasha. I was like, no, I'd already committed, But
oh wow, that must have been hairy.
It was awful. We were having a party at the house because of these guys visiting. I invited all the friends that they already know here and stuff. And we were having a party at the house, and Bodhi was in the hospital all day, and the hospital called me, and they're like, she's really not doing well. And they said, she sort of seems to have given up the will to live.
Ooh.
And I was like, that is not Bodhi.
She's pretty far gone, because she's a lively
yeah,
creature.
Very. And so I left my party as it was starting, and I went to the animal hospital, and I spent about 2 hours with her, she was just limp. And I spent about 2 hours with her in my lap and stroking her, and I was like, you just can't die, Bodhi. This is just you can't.
You're not allowed to.
And I just not that. I was just like, you're a strong dog, and this does not need to take you. And she turned the corner. The vet said she'd never seen anything like it. She said, I've never seen a dog turn the corner like that.
Wow.
And she, I honestly feel pretty confident. She was on fluids and everything else, and I'm sure that helped. But I'm pretty confident that it saved her life, that I went there and spent that couple hours with her.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
I certainly believe in that.
Well, especially with a dog. They will do anything for their owners,
Oh, yeah. The faithfulness is astonishing.
It really is. There's no other relationship like it.
Well, I haven't had a dog in 40 years, but I remember my dog.
Right.
My wife took him when we separated, because I was sort of peripatetic at the time, and she just she kept all the animals basically. So, you're just not up for it. So, and I had to agree with her, because I didn't know where I was going. I was working in theater in New York at the time, and I ended up finding a permanent place, but for a while there I was batting around, couch surfing, and the usual thing. So yeah, but I remember Jeter Lester. That was his name.
It's a great name.
That's the name from Steinbeck's Tobacco Road, because I thought he was going to be like this little coonhound dog, and I just like the name too. So yeah, Jeter Lester, you're Jeter Lester now.
That's cool.
He was great. He's a miniature shepherd. What's the golden retriever mix. So his temperament was fantastic.
Yeah, that would be a great temperament. So tell me, let's go back a little bit. What's your kind of origin story? You.
Well, I was born from the primordial ooze, without a mother or father, and with the spirit of the universe animating me.
If that had been true, we would have had a lot of different kinds of conversations over the year.
Well,
what happened after that?
Well, I sporulated and lay dormant for millions of years, and then
and then my father met my mother, and
yes, exactly.
Let's hear about them.
Well, what's to say? My father, I never knew. My real father, I never knew. He left when I was still an infant, like 8 months, a year old. He took a powder. And my ma is a full-blooded Cayuga Indian, so that makes me a member of the tribe. It's matrilineal, like you Jewish people are.
Yep.
And I was kind of raised half in and half out of that milieu. My mom moved away from the reservation because it was kind of stifling, and also was next to a small town in upstate New York near Buffalo, Silver Creek, New York. And the racism was just intense. So she made her way to the big bad city. She met my father. She worked as a graphic artist. She met my father. He was her boss. He was like 20 years older. They had me. He took off, and then we moved to Chicago. So my first memories are of Chicago, which is a fantastic town, and I was just there a couple 3 weeks ago delivering a booth. So for 9 years, I was an only child, and she married my stepfather, who I could not abide. And they lasted for another 9 years, and then I was off to college. So that's the general outlines of things.
And where did you go to college?
Cornell University.
Cornell, right, yeah. So that's a good school.
Yeah, it's a fantastic school. Beautiful place to go, too. I think it was fantastic. But, you know, touching back on what I was talking about in terms of not having comfort with yourself in the universe, I basically went to college because my mom said I was going to go to college. And I lucked out that I got a scholarship, I was a good student. I mean, I had decent grades. I was in the top 10% of my class in a magnet school in Chicago, but probably not good enough to go to the Ivy League, except I was a little bit of an affirmative action kid. And a couple of things happened. First off, I was just gobsmacked at the sophistication of my fellow students. You know, I come from Chicago, which is no cow town anymore. And I knew sophisticated people, I knew intelligent people. But when I got to this place that was populated almost exclusively with East Coast Jews, it was like, holy fuck. I got some catching up to do, and I didn't know how to do it. So I putzed around for 2 years, took a leave of absence because this girl broke my heart, and you know my purposelessness there came very evident to me. And after bumming around for a year, I went to Europe, did the whole continental tour with the backpack thing, and came back, and I was just about to leave again, and I stumbled into the theater because I was looking for credits to fill my electives, and just being in the place, I came home. It was like, oh, this is where I belong. And so that kept me there, and I graduated, I don't know how, because I never went to class. I was always backstage, and went to work in theater in New York. And I lasted a few years there, and decided that professional theater wasn't for me. So I came out here to Los Angeles, and the next 35 years is another story.
I mean, are you going to tell it?
No, not right now.
Okay.
It's a little... and I'm in a better mood because I came out here and I was duped. But, and honestly, I've been in Los Angeles in spite of myself. I came from New York, and I was absolutely enchanted with New York. I love New York. But I've stayed out here, well, mostly because I had nothing to go to if I were to go back to New York. I was really there just for the theater. I didn't have a very extensive circle of friends that weren't theater people. And so if I were to go back there, I would have to start completely over, and I didn't really want to do that. So, I've been here for 35 years, going, what's next? And, another 5 years went by. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's, yeah.
All right, well, we can circle back to it when, if we loosen it up a little bit. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. And I'll just say, I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions, and you're always free not to answer them, I don't want to put you in a bad spot. But I also really like, humanizing the people who I'm talking to. It's the 11 people listening to this will really care. And so there's a built-in safety among the small population of people, and especially initially, who are, going to hear this stuff. And then, once the podcast becomes famous, then, they'll go back and you'll be a celeb.
Oh, all right, fantastic.
But I remember when I met you, um, you had a cabinet shop, and I had been working up the street for Kurt, and you offered me an extra couple bucks an hour and way more responsibility, which I probably wasn't ready for, but you offered it to me anyway.
Well, I was looking for something to take the strain. I was working 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week. Um, well, here's a pattern that's repeated twice in the last 40 years. I got into cabinet making because I met a guy who was a cabinet maker, and I was being a carpenter at the time because I had been a commodities broker for a year and a half. It lasted about the average for commodities brokers in the United States, a year and a half. Discovered I couldn't sell in a bear market, so that was way too much of a strain, and I just decided to depend on my skills, which I'd learned in theater, and also in New York, making a living when I wasn't working in theater. So yeah, got enamored of cabinet making. Saw that it was pretty lucrative. Opened up the shop, and then the recession hit.
Oh, God.
It was like I caught the last fleck of foam on the wave before it crashed.
And when is this?
When was this? Well, when did it was 89 that the Berlin Wall fell? It was when the Soviet Union collapsed.
Okay.
Because all the aerospace money that was keeping construction afloat out here in Los Angeles just dried up like beer on a hot rock. So yeah, there I was. I had floated all this debt, got all this equipment, and was just, I spent half my time assembling IKEA furniture for people. So yeah, I was looking for someone to take a little of the load off. You were working for Kurt. Kurt who? I forgot.
I was working. Well, I was working for Kurt Gary at Kurtcraft.
At Kurtcraft.
He was in that same area. He was just up the block in one of the industrial buildings off Colorado. I forget
Right.
the cross street. Colorado and Scott, I think. No,
Ah.
that was your name.
Well, I was. Well, I was in Nebraska, just south of Bundy.
Yeah, he was walking distance from you.
Okay.
Yeah, everyone was walking distance from that cafe. What was that place called?
Oh, Young's.
Young's. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I remember
Well,
that
that place,
well.
you'd be shocked. That place, that whole area has gentrified unbelievably. It's all these creative types. It's all these millennials, doing their crafty startups. I've sold a couple of booths in studio building to people, and it's just a lot cleaner, and a lot more expensive, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kurt had to leave his place because the building sold to someone new, and after him being there for like 30 years and definitely paying below market rent, but also being a very good tenant, the landlord doubled or tripled the rent, and that was it. That was the end of his business that he'd been running forever. And then he took a small shop like off Adams or something. I haven't seen him since then, and now I think he's making small projects and musical instruments and just
Yes, people survive.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've survived this long. Yeah. I don't know if I ever met him. Did I ever meet him?
I don't know. I mean,
The name is familiar, Kurtcraft.
you guys may have met at one of my art openings or something. I mean, it's possible that you would have met that way.
Right,
um,
right.
Because
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I came to
you-
work for you in probably 95 or maybe 94.
You also met me through Deutschhaben, didn't you?
No,
Well,
I was introduced to you by this guy named Doug. I had a painting studio over in that area. I was renting studio space in that. There was a pretty cool space with a lot of artists and shared, who basically were in an open room, and everybody had a wall and had kind of a studio, but
Yeah.
each
I think
room
I've
had
ever-
multiple artists in it. And Doug, who lived in his car, I think, he kind of lived. I think he lived in his car in Kurt's parking lot. He worked for Kurt every now and then. He worked for that guy Larry, I think his name was, and
Oh yeah, I remember Larry.
he worked for Steve, who had rented the back portion of Larry's shop. I think Larry lived in his shop upstairs or something. That was kind of the slums of Santa Monica, so it was still pretty nice.
Yeah. It was over. Yeah, I remember that. Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I remember.
he
Right.
had a story. I mean, he went to Vietnam, fell in love with this woman, brought her over, brought her mother over, and then she left him. You know, it was one of those classic.
Yeah, I ran into him 5 or 6, 7 or 8 years ago, um, and we exchanged stories and stuff. And it made me realize just how much time passed because he looked old.
Yeah.
He was a few years older than I was, and it really showed. And now I look in the mirror and I go, "Who the fuck is that?" So, yeah. That whole it's coming back to me now. I just basically forgot about it. I hadn't thought about it in years and years. So yeah, okay. So Doug introduced us.
Yeah, so this guy Doug, his girlfriend had a studio. She had a wall that was 90 degrees to my wall, and she was really nice. There were a handful of people that I really liked in there, but I was like, 24, and I was super excited about being around other artists. I just come back from Europe, and I wanted to have exposure, as much exposure as possible. And these guys had a big show once a year where the galleries would come in, and I was all about getting a gallery. I mean, I was pretty aggressive in that way. And the people who ran the place,
you've always been a hustler. You've always been aggressive about going after what you want. You're not a passive guy by any means.
well, I don't know how to take that.
No, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
I admired
Thank you.
that. I admired that back then. Because I tend to let things slide a little bit.
Well, I'll never forget when we had that job glazing windows at that Tante Helena's house or something like that. Remember that?
Yeah.
And she ended up buying my family's heirloom piano. And you were like, boy, you just... yeah, I forget how you said it. But like, you'll just... There's nothing you won't do. There's no opportunity you won't seize. It was something along those lines.
Yeah.
But
I remember her little kid.
yeah, she had...
She had a brat.
Yeah, she had a couple kids. One was really a baby, but she was very sweet. She was really kind. That's my recollection of her.
Yeah. Oh, she was very much.
I also
very much so.
remember you asking me to supervise.
And you not.
Well, no, I just didn't understand the assignment. You're still mad about it. Have that guy dig 1 foot by 1 foot holes or something, and they were like a foot deep and 2 feet wide, and you're like, oh God, for fence posts. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
Oh, don't worry about it. They stood full of water for a year, until the one of his kids fell in it.
Oh,
said,
no.
You got to do this. So I came and did what I had to do.
Oh gosh. One of his kids fell. That's how big I made the holes. Like whole kid could fit in there.
Yeah.
He could bathe in there. So
like sinkholes.
So I was in this art studio, and I was there for like a month, and they kicked me out.
Really?
Because they said I was too loud and too interactive, and like I wanted to critique with people, I wanted to talk to people. I had been working in my parents' garage for like 6 months or a year or something, and that wasn't working out anymore because I would paint all night, and the garage shared a wall with a guest house, and this kid who lived in the guest house was unrelated to us. We had the main house, and he rented the guest house from the owners, and I would keep him up at night, and he never said anything for a really long time, and then he wrote a letter to the landlord instead of just saying something to me. So then he and I arranged that he would I could work until 11:30 when Cheers was over. And literally, like, I would hear him watch Cheers. This is back when everybody watched Cheers at 11 o'clock. And I would hear him watch Cheers. And then, when the song came back on at the end, I was like, oh, fuck, I got to stop. And then he'd knock on the wall. That was our routine. And I'd go in the house. So that wasn't working anymore. So I needed a real space. So I was very excited to be around people and be around artists. And I mean, I was so into painting at that time.
That's a shame you got disappointed like that. Because that's one of those times in life where if it falls into place right, it can really jet propel you. And if you get squashed, it can really retard your progress. So, it's too bad it didn't work out that way, the ideal way that you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, well, I had a few incarnations around that. I mean, I went to that studio, I worked for like a month, and then the guy's like, you got to go. And then, which really took me by surprise. They didn't give me any warnings or, Maybe they did. They probably came over and said, can you quiet down a little bit or something. I probably didn't recognize the warning signs, but they were probably there.
Hmm.
And so then I went to a different studio down the street, and I was there for 3 or 4 months. And then I think I went to Europe. I think I just up and went to Europe.
Oh, yeah. I met you after your return from Czechoslovakia. Yeah.
Okay, but that was between those two times. Like I returned from Czechoslovakia, then a year and a half later I went back to Europe. And so I worked for you in that year and a half.
Oh, okay.
And then I went back to Berlin for 6 months. And so when I met you, it was before I went to Berlin, because I still have them. I have some letters that you wrote to me. Like we exchanged a couple back when people wrote
Did I
letters.
write letters?
Part-
Really?
yeah.
Did I actually write letters?
You wrote. This is a long time ago. This is the mid '90s. Yeah, you wrote me some
Wow.
of the best letters I've ever gotten.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were just so filled with your sense of humor, and they were really thoughtful and funny, and yeah, it was great. I still have them. I'll scan them and
Right.
send them to you so you can
That'd be nice.
go
Yeah,
back to that time. Yeah, it was cool.
I don't have much of a detailed memory. Things happen, I experience them, and then I'm on to the next thing. And then when I try to recall it, I got to spike it to something, and there's no detail to it. So that'd be fun to it'd be fun to read that and have things well up inside me.
I will have feelings for the first
I will
time in 30 years. That'll be
Yes.
amazing.
Feelings.
So,
Well, did I have the shop then?
so what happened was
Ah.
I was working in one of these studios. I don't remember which studio I was working in when I started to work for you, but my dad had originally said I needed to get a job working, and I got a job in a cafe, and that was a nightmare. And so then I got a job doing woodworking, and I worked for Kurt, and then I worked for you. And 2 days after I started working for you, your shop burned down. Like we delivered the kitchen, thank goodness. The
Okay.
first day I assembled a whole kitchen for you. I'd never assembled a cabinet in my life. You taught me how to do it, and then you left me to my devices and said, And I remember I had to leave, but I didn't leave until I finished the last couple cabinets. And I remember that made a real impression on you. You were like, "Thank you for finishing."
Yeah, no, that was big. I don't remember that. I don't remember that you worked on a project like that. I certainly remember the shop burning down.
It was 2 days before the shop burned down, so it's possible that my having done something nice for you was mildly overshadowed by you losing everything you'd worked for so long. I don't know. I'm just thinking it could happen.
That's just spitballing there, just throwing.
Yeah, I mean anything's possible. So
Yeah, there's another thing. There's another thing that can make you fail is disaster.
yeah, well, it was some homeless guy like threw a cigarette in a dumpster that was under the eave of the building.
Well, it wasn't just my dumpster. It was dumpsters throughout the neighborhood. In Larry's complex, he set a dumpster fire too. It was like 4 or 5 of them that same night. Yeah, and it was overfilled, and the flames reached up into the open rafters of this corrugated tin building and burned it out. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Oh God, I remember coming in there the next day. I remember showing up for work. I don't know if you called me or not. I mean, this is before cell phones and pagers, I
Yeah.
remember showing up for work and there not being a shop there. Or maybe I was on site because at least we delivered that job. I mean,
Well, do you remember who that job was?
I don't remember the woman's name, but I remember it was it was on the Miracle Mile. It was right off Wilshire, and there was a duplex. We were doing the upstairs and the downstairs kitchen. And
God, I don't remember that job at all.
okay, well, I'm going to refresh your memory about a few things. So,
Okay.
so we were doing this job off Wilshire, and it was a little, like apartment building. The apartment building probably had like 6 apartments in it, or 4. I don't know,
That's
but we were
starting to
doing.
come back to me a little bit. Yeah.
We were doing the kitchens in 2 of them, and they were like, there's a row of garages in the back, and it was kind of hard to get in and out of there, and I remember a couple things. I remember installing an upper cabinet. I remember having wet paint and then installing an upper cabinet, and then the back of the cabinet swelled out because it wasn't sealed on the back.
Yeah. Right.
And that was a little minor freak out. And then, understandably, because the thing was installed, I remember that she had an old refrigerator, and you had built the space to exactly.
I remember. Yeah, and then plastered it up.
Yep.
and build up the plaster so much that we had to hit it with a sledgehammer.
Yeah. And I remember I was like, what are you doing? Like, because this fridge is going to die soon and it's never going to come out. Like, I just couldn't believe that it was an hour to get that thing in there. That was
Oh yeah,
that was insanity.
Well, it would have been half a day to rebuild it. So yeah, I remember the job. I do remember the job.
Okay,
yeah.
So here was the other horrifying thing that happened, was that she had a neighbor, or maybe she owned the building, was one of her tenants.
I remember this. Yeah.
So
you got toasted for that.
Well, yeah, but I didn't mean anything by it. But she had this African American tenant, and he would just show up out of nowhere. And I just asked him, like, innocently, I was like, where do you keep coming from? Like, I was just curious. It was such an innocent question because I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm certainly not, I don't think racist in any way. I don't care where people come from or what they're made of. I mean, as long as they're cool people. And I was fascinated and curious. And he said, I live up there. I was like, oh, I was wondering, and then went back to my work. And then the next day you kind of called me out. You're like, did you accost one of the tenants here? Because he's a professor at UCLA, and this guy's a doctorate. And
I got it secondhand. What can I say? She was pissed.
Oh man,
she was really upset.
Understandably, except that a lot of things were presumed.
I'm sure he didn't mean anything by it. Blah blah blah. Jason's not like that. Blah blah blah. But it's people just took it wrong. One of those things that maybe we should have come together and you apologized and explained yourself, and he wouldn't accept it, and then we would be all fucked up.
Well, I remember you being
that's
like,
the technical term for resolving that kind of situation.
Yeah, I remember you saying, did you say that? I was like, oh yeah, totally. I just couldn't figure out what door he came out of. And you were like, well, I need to make sure, like, if you have any problem with black people, like, you're not going to be able to work for me. I was like, are you kidding me?
Did I say that?
Yeah.
Ah.
I mean, rightfully so. I mean, I would have. You said it politely. You weren't accusatory at all. But you were like, we didn't know each other that well. But obviously, you didn't have the sense that I was a bigot in any way. And I really don't think I am. And that certainly was nowhere near my motivation when I was having that interchange with the guy. So yeah, that was a really.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy experience. So, and then after we finished the installation, you're like, well, thanks so much for all your help, and I was out of a job.
Yeah. Well, I was out on my ass.
You were out of a shop. Yeah, I know. It was worse for you,
but yeah, by then I was living in that hillside house.
Oh, you had the best house up in Laurel Canyon.
It was the best of houses. It was the worst of houses.
Yeah, I remember. Like
it was an amazing deal. It was $600 a month, which I couldn't pay because I was arthritic and out of work, and my shop had burned down. But it had the most amazing view. You saw it.
I was there a lot. I helped you do all kinds of. We painted the cabinets. We installed a tile floor or something in one of the rooms. Like you were doing a lot of work to make that place better. The roof leaked. We put up a bunch of OSB on the roof, and then you had to move out before you used it all. And then we moved it to one of my shops and lined a garage with it.
Yeah, I had it sanded. I remember, and then cut into squares, and we used that as a tile. So it was an OSB floor.
Okay.
Yeah, no, if I had even a halfway steady income, I could have made that place really hot. But the roof leaked. I could not stop the roof from leaking. And I mean, when it leaked. I had a run in the bedroom. I had plastic underneath the whole ceiling, tapered down to a place where it could run off into a tube out the door. and it had no heat. Then so in the wintertime it was frigid.
Yeah.
So it was like camping out, but it was a cool house.
Oh man, and you had a view.
Yeah, from LAX to at least to Long Beach, and then farther east from there. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, that was a really cool place.
When it was cloudy or there was fog, I could look out and I could see downtown poking up and Century City poking up and just this field of white. So it was really neat to look at. I really enjoyed that. And the summer times sitting on a porch was really cool too. So yeah, I packed up what tools I had left. My table saw fortunately was still working, and I outfitted the garage there and had a little bit of a shop in that. But by then the recession was in full deep horribleness.
Right.
I can't even describe it. So yeah, it was a struggle. I was struggling.
Well, I remember ending up with your jointer.
Oh, did I sell you that?
Well, it's sort of you. I think I needed a joiner when I had the garage shop on Sierra Bonita,
Right.
and I needed it or wanted it, or you needed to use it, and you needed a place, and you left it there for a while, and then you owed me like $200.
Oh, okay.
And you were like, "How about if you just keep it instead of the $200?" I was like, "Dude, it's an $800 machine." You're like, "Well, I don't have the money, so you win." I was like,
Did I say that?
Well, so I took the joiner and I used it for a while. I even moved it to Van Nuys when I moved, and then I was changing the blades on it, and it was I was like running out the door to go to therapy, and I'd spent the whole day lining up these blades,
Mm-hmm.
and I was tightening literally the last bolt, and it was a lot looser than I thought, and I just went straight for tightening it as hard as I could, and I slammed my hand down on the blade and cut my thumb open.
Oh, geez.
I still have the scar from it.
Well, they'll take parts of your body.
As soon as it healed, I went out to Jesse at Eagle Tools, and I bought a brand new joiner that had those Tersa heads where you could pop the blades out and change them without ever injuring yourself.
Uh-huh.
And I traded in the old joiner, and I mean, he gave me a few bucks for it, and I used it to buy all these other machines from him. And then I was using that machine, and I had the wood kind of stopped up in there, the wood chips, and I was cleaning them out with my hand, and the machine was on, and I cut my hand on that joiner.
Well, that's because it was a jointer planer. Yeah, you were reaching underneath to get the exhaust clear.
Yep.
Right where the planer.
Oh, it was so stupid. I mean, I just can't believe I did that. But, and I felt like this weird, like, and it was just shaving my fingernail, And I did it like twice. Like I did it once, and I was like, "Oh, that was weird." I did it again. I was like, "That feels odd." And I pull my hand out, and I've been jointing off my fingernail from the underneath. Oh God, I mean, I'm getting like, my skin's just tightening up thinking about it.
Shivers, yeah. You could have pulled out some bloody stumps if you'd kept it in there longer.
Oh God, yeah, that was awful. Anyway, yeah, I'll just never. So that joiner, I was so happy to see that thing go. I was like, man, the karma attached to this joiner, it's going to a stranger. I want nothing to do with it anymore. And because hopefully that person would, have a clean relationship with it. But
yeah. Or its bloodlust had been slaked by then.
Yeah, it had. It had. Oh man, I can't think of the right phrase, but it was trying to avenge itself, and it succeeded.
Okay.
Anyway, so
yeah. So
all right. So what happened next? So I remember.
Next thing that happened was that they threw me out of there because they sold it. Oh, and I had the nastiest landlord. He's this little old Jewish guy, and his wife was in Deutschhaben. That's how I found out about it. But he was just an asshole. I was late on the rent, but it was $600, and these guys were rolling in dough. And besides, it was a shithole. I mean, he was making money off of really substandard housing.
Yeah, for sure. That would not have passed any.
But I did learn how to cook in that house, because it was a period of severe underemployment, shall we say, and I spent the time. When I had days on end with nothing to do, I spent the time watching cooking shows. I would watch like 6-7 hours of cooking shows. And I believe it was just when the Food Network started. So they had a lot more how-to shows than they have now. Now it's all competition and Guy Fieri being a dick and contests and that kind of thing. But back then it was technical shows. They would show you how to like make the mother sauces, hollandaise and bechamel and blah blah blah. And I had enough to buy food, so I would go out to the supermarket and buy just $200-300 worth of groceries, and then spend the whole weekend cooking. So and I'm a damn good cook now. I think I cooked for your get-togethers once.
Yeah, the Thursday night dinners. We'll have to talk about that. That was a golden era.
Yeah, it was. But then at the same time, my hip is just killing me. I had insurance, but I had no money, and I couldn't do it without the copay. So, oh no, what happened was, yeah, when I got thrown out of the house, I lost my insurance. Yeah, and then it took 3 or 4 years for me to be able to get it back, and then a year waiting before I made the claim. So I was hobbling around on a cane for like 4 years, 5 years. So I was semi-crippled, and yeah, that was tough. I have to say,
Yeah.
no money, no health, no girlfriend. Yeah, it took a while to get back together. Then I got my hip replaced, and then I started working for you.
God help you. Oh, remember we had that framing job, like framing as in making picture frames.
Oh yeah,
Remember we cut like 40 frames. Oh, that was.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's those make do jobs. It's like your buddy, the master furniture maker. You know, he's he's working way below his skill level, but you know, he doesn't have the opportunity. He doesn't have the orders. He can't do it, and he's got to put food in his mouth and keep a roof over his head. So that's what he does. So that's what we were doing. So I was grateful for that, because otherwise I wouldn't have had anything going on.
Well, it worked both ways, because I remember I was able to take on jobs that were outside of my expertise. And, with your assistance and your experience, we were able to do things. I was really able to learn a lot on the job. So it worked out. I mean, it was pretty symbiotic.
Yeah, yeah.
I would like to think.
You saved my ass. So.
Well, and I got to learn. I mean, because I ended up, you remember I got that real shop. It's like 1,800 square feet and all the crazy machinery. I mean, by the time I sold that business, I'd really learned how to build stuff. I mean, it was.
Did you make a profit?
I sold it for exactly what I owed.
Really?
I was $90,000 in debt, and I sold it for $90,000. And I sold it on Craigslist. I put an ad on Craigslist that said, cabinet shop for sale, $90,000. You can move in today and build your first kitchen tomorrow. And
if you lived here, you'd be home by now.
Yeah, that was exactly it. But it was true. I mean, the place was totally decked out. It was turnkey.
Oh no, that was a magnificent little shop.
Oh yeah,
I really liked it.
I loved it. Yeah. And this guy named Jim was looking to change his life, and I remember he lived in Venice. He wasn't sure what he was going to do, and he had looked at buying a French fry store, like where that last piece of Venice Boulevard hits the boardwalk.
Yeah. He probably would have made out.
Well, no, there was something that happened. This is post 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
This must be like 2000. He bought it in 2004, so this must have started in 2003, because he strung me along for like 6 months. And
was he your only prospect?
Well, I knew he was going to buy it. So I stopped looking for other prospects.
I gotcha.
And I just had a sense that he really wanted it, and I liked him. He was a really nice guy, also really intelligent. I mean, by the time I left, it was pretty ugly, but he was always seeking out gossip. Somehow he just ended up, it's a long, convoluted story, but he would find out all kinds of horrible things and draw the worst possible conclusion about me, unbeknownst to me, and then come in the next day and start yelling at me about something that I did not do.
What right did he have to yell at you about that stuff?
Well, none in my mind, but he felt like he always felt like he paid too much for the business, and that I took advantage of him. And meanwhile, I sold him the business. I stayed there for 6 months.
You helped with his transition?
Yeah, I helped him transition. He wanted to pay me $40 an hour. I said, you're not going to be able to afford that. Let's do $35. And then when it became apparent that he was going to be losing money on every job paying me $35 an hour, I said, why don't we just bid the jobs? I'll do all the work. I'll teach you how to do it. And,
wow,
we'll pay for the materials, and then you can take 15% of what's left and give me the rest. So you're guaranteed you're making something. It was something like that. And then I ended up taking on some jobs that people wanted me to do it and only me to do it. So then I sort of rented his shop for 15% of the gross on the job.
It's flexible.
Yeah, we tried to make it work, but then we hired somebody, and I trained that guy. I mean, he was really talented. That guy was more talented than I was in some ways.
The guy that you hired, not
the guy that we
was there.
hired to run the shop when I was gone, because the guy who bought the shop, he just didn't know enough to run it.
Okay.
And I think he kind of realized that, and he got himself in over his head, and sort of took it out on me, you know. Anytime something went wrong in his life, even for years after I'd sold the shop, I'd get a phone call from him yelling at me about something. Like when my credit went bad, I understood this, but my credit went bad at one point, like really bad. And after 2008 or something, when the banks just overnight stopped loaning money.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the second thing.
Yeah.
You know, in 2008, that's where I got wiped out, clean down to the rind.
Oh, we all got hammered on that one, man. I mean, I kind of got out by the skin of my teeth. I mean, I got really lucky, and most of my debt was forgiven, and I borrowed a few bucks from friends to, you know, pay everything off at 25 cents on the dollar. I mean, it's an awful thing, but I was able to get out of it and not declare bankruptcy. But in hindsight, I should have just declared fucking bankruptcy. It would have been smarter. Yeah, because I just finished paying off just last month. This month, February. This month I finished paying off my personal debt that I borrowed to get out of that credit card crisis. So anyway, so I sold him the shop, and we hired this guy, and it just became a hobby of his to beat me up anytime something was wrong in his life, and poison this guy who we hired against me. And you know, meanwhile, I mean, I built that shop up from nothing.
I know, yeah.
And you know, it was kind of amazing what I had accomplished, and you know, learned.
That was a real production shop. No, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
I was jealous. I never got that far with mine because, you know, it burned down.
It burned down, and I had the luxury of, you know, better credit. I mean, I was able to buy all those machines. I mean, I bought machines that the guys who didn't have any experience working, you know, could work for me and create some of the same results. I mean, the machines were that good. That was my
like the panel saw.
The panel saw, the planer, everything was digital. I mean, that was my move. Let these guys be able to create, you know, really accurate results without having the necessary skills. But still, I didn't use that shop as much as I could have. I mean, he made a lot more money than I did, because he had a much more business savvy mind. But he was going to buy this French fry shop, and I forget what happened. I think it was the Iraq War, and the French were not supporting us. And there became this really anti-French sentiment in the country.
Freedom fries.
Freedom fries, exactly. They started calling them freedom fries. And I remember him coming in one day. He's like, I got to say, Jason, you really saved my ass. Imagine if I'd bought that French fry shop. I'd be completely destitute right now.
Wow.
You know, I'm really happy I bought your...
Oh, wait, not in Venice. People weren't against French fries in Venice. I mean, the freedom fry things was the Capitol Cafe that Congress goes to, and it was right-wing Republicans who insisted on not calling it French anything.
But it became a thing. Like, it was the worst possible time to have a business that only sold French fries.
Yeah, okay.
Possibly the only time in history that would be a bad business was right around this time. And so it was this kind of thing where he walked in, he's like, thank you so much for selling me this shop, and, you know, me not buying that French fry shop. And then we had the same mechanic, this guy named Ed, who was a real smooth talker in Santa Monica. And I had talked to Ed about buying the shop. And he's like, oh, you cabinet makers make all the money, you know? And I was like, well, you can buy my shop. He's like, oh, maybe I'll do that. I'll buy it for my dad, give him something to do. And I had told the guy who bought my shop this. And he went, and he was talking to Ed. And he's like, hey, Ed, you know Jason. We both know someone in common. He's like, oh, yeah, Jason. How's he doing? He hasn't been in a while. He says, well, he's good. I bought his cabinet shop. He's like, what'd you pay for it? He's like, I paid his asking price, $90,000. And Ed's like, oh, man, I was going to give him $50,000.
Yeah, right.
And I said, well, and so Jim came in.
He would have given it to you and given it right back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wouldn't have taken it. But Jim didn't know that. And he came in with a head of steam, and he was so mad. And I was like, what's going on, dude? You know, he's kind of passive aggressive. I was like, what happened?
He's sitting over there steaming.
Yeah, right? And so he told me the story about Ed. He's like, well, I just got back from Ed, and he said you were going to sell him the shop for $50,000. I said, I never said that. He said, well, that's his impression. I said, well, maybe that's what he was going to offer, but that doesn't mean I was going to say yes. And I said, you know, I told him, I'm like, dude, I don't know why you have so much distrust in me, but if you have a question, you should just ask me. I mean, don't just assume the worst and come in here all crazy.
Some people
and
have that
rattled.
dynamic. Some people have that process.
It,
It's one thing that I've learned is how to spot that kind of thing, and nip a relationship with people like that in the bud, because I just don't want to deal with it anymore. It's like there's a little bit of inappropriateness to some response. My antennae go up like full strength, and I'll even test it, and if I get that kind of thing that you say you've gotten from your guy, I'll bail. I'll just bolt.
well, it was a little more complicated than that.
Well, you had $90,000 of his money, and he had your shop. So.
Well, I didn't have 100% of the money.
Oh, you didn't?
He paid me, he'd paid me like 40 or 50,000, and then he needed some time because his dad gave him some money for it, and so he had to wait for that to come in. And
how old was this guy?
How old is he? He's probably about 5 or 10 years older than I am. He might have been 40 at the time.
Okay.
I was 34.
Okay.
And his dad is, ex-military. I mean, pretty hard-ass dude.
Right.
He brought his dad in to meet me so his dad could size me up a little bit, and
are your intentions honorable?
Yeah, exactly. And this is before he bought the shop, and and then disappeared for 3 months, whatever. Yeah. It's all so long ago, but I remember that he hadn't paid me all the money. I couldn't just up and leave.
Right.
And I had started projects for people, and I was in the middle of the projects, and I couldn't leave the projects either. So we had to work it out.
Uh-huh.
But we did have an agreement that I would stay for 6 months, and if I bailed or he fired me in the first month, that it was $10,000. It was a severance pay. I would either have to pay him 10 or he'd have to pay me 10.
Okay.
And then in the second month, it went to 5, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then 500, or whatever the scale was. And he cut me loose a month early, and he paid me the $1,000 to leave.
Oh, wow.
He said, he just came in one day. He's like, Jason, no hard feelings, but I want my shop to myself.
Well, yeah.
That was fine. I was thrilled. I got to leave and move to North Carolina and do what I wanted to do that much sooner. By the time I left, we were kind of back in each other's good graces. And then I remember I came back to LA a month later, and I had a couple projects I had to finish, and he wanted me to use the shop at night, and this was completely my fault. I got into like building this tabletop out of all the old leftover pieces of wood, and he's like, dude, I own that wood now. Like, you can't just use that wood. And I was like, it's useless except for this project. It doesn't matter. And then I was doing it during the day because I was seeing friends at night. And finally he came in one day with his wife, and he was furious, and he's like, hand me the keys. You're not allowed to come here anymore. And
oh, wow.
Get your shit and get the fuck out. Like, literally.
Wow.
And it was pretty awful, but I have to say I understood it. Like, he wasn't in the wrong. He could have handled it nicer, but he wasn't wrong. And I really understood. That was one of the times that I really understood how my sort of only child syndrome was destroying my relationships. Like, I just didn't see it. I didn't see what I was doing to the other person.
Well, that would explain the rules.
Well, yeah. So tell me about these rules, because
No, it's an expression for coming up against a certain obstinacy when I would suggest something. You would want it one particular way, and that would be it, and you weren't really open for discussion. And a lot of it was, God, it's so long ago, who can remember details now? It's just that you were pretty convinced that you wanted it this way, and that's the way it was going to be. And so he could either submit or, tell you to fuck off.
And you did both.
I did both.
You tried all different options
in that order. So, I played out the string. What can I say?
Oh man.
It was just a quirk. It's a personality quirk of yours. You're a warm guy, and you were really good to me when I was really down and out. So I can't complain about that. You're real strict about your stuff, your physical stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah.
That hasn't changed.
Oh yeah? That's mine.
Well,
So,
it wasn't that. I don't mind sharing. I'm happy to share things. They just have to be cared for.
Oh, yeah.
And no one cares for things the way I do, except for the woman who works for me now, this woman, Lindsay, who is like the greatest invention ever. I mean, it's actually her husband who's helping me with the podcast. Like, I'm really close with their family. They're amazing people. And, she and I share a lot of the same neuroses. And so when I want to do something that's totally overkill, she's like, oh my God, I wish I'd thought of that. Instead of why, that's stupid. Yeah. Like the two of us are always out meticulousizing each other. And
meticulousizing.
Oh, that's a word. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's
meticulated.
It's not, it's not fun feedback, but it's important feedback. I mean, I genuinely appreciate it because I care a lot about the people in my life, and I care a lot about you, I mean, you were a really important friend. I remember my mom meeting you at one of my art openings, and I overheard her thanking you for introducing me to NPR.
Really?
She's like, are you the Scott who introduced my son to public radio? Because they listened to it when I was a kid, but I was never into it,
Oh, well, I'm glad that I could do that.
Yeah, you did. They really appreciated it. They remember you fondly, if only for that, but other things as well.
Let's see. That was your dad's wife?
No, that was my biological mother.
Who
did that. Yeah.
Your dad's wife is Holly, right?
Holly, right? Yeah.
I can't believe I remember that name.
Well, you spent a lot of Thursday night dinners with her. I mean.
Right.
She would come all the time.
I remember one time at the house on the little Spanish house with the full suite of furniture. I said, no, I made it all, and she was saying, God, he made those couches and those chairs.
People do the same thing in my house. I have these hideously ugly fabric couches that I just, when I was sofa shopping, I didn't know how to buy a sofa. My friends had these same sofas. I was like, I'll just get those, and then I couldn't get the color I wanted, and I got this awful color. Like, everything about them, I hate these couches. If I sell this house, I'm not taking the couches. And even if the new owner doesn't want them, he's getting them. And
you own the house?
I own a house, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I bought it when I got here. I had excellent credit still, and it was the era of the no-doc loan. And I no-docked the shit out of this place. They're like, how much money do you have in your bank? I was like, nothing. And they're like, well, you're going to need down payment. I was like, oh, yeah, no, I've got $50,000. And then I got on the phone and borrowed $50,000 from some friends and made a down payment and bought this house.
Wow.
So, yeah, this house is
you
crazy.
You could make that kind of phone call. Wow.
At the time. I got no one to call today, man.
Yeah.
I called you, but no luck.
I can lend you $50.
You know what? I'll take it.
Okay. I'll pop it in the mail tomorrow.
No. By the time it gets here, I'll have already spent it too many times.
Yeah, no kidding.
So people, all my furniture that I made in LA and some I made here, it's all in my house. And so people will ask me, like, where'd you get this furniture? I'm like, I made it, And they're like, all of it? I said, yeah. I said, everything in the house, I built it. And they're like, really? You made these couches? I'm like, no, I didn't make those ugly-ass couches. Why would I make a couch? Like, well, I made everything, every table.
They weren't ugly-ass couches because they were the new Sears ones that you lent me the money to buy. Remember that?
No, yours are beautiful, yeah. I had forgotten, but yeah, I guess that's true. Where are my couches?
They're landfill now, man.
I love those. Actually, those were really nice. And I remember you had set it up in a way that was, I'd never seen anyone set up a living room like that, and it was all perfect. Everything was at a weird angle toward the TV, and it worked.
Yeah, it was a great little place to live, until they sold it out from under me. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, well, like I say, I've learned a lot of different ways to fail. My own character, disaster, disease, destruction, deception. That's just the D's.
Extortion. Let's move on to the E's.
So yeah, it's been a ride. I find myself, I'm 64. I'm going to be 65 in April, and I actually don't get Social Security till 66. But I could I could retire a little early and get some. But there's so much less in front of me than there is behind me, and I just don't know where the fuck it went. Because I just don't know where it went. It's that experience. I'm sure millions of people have had it before, but I'm having it now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 46,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm 20 years behind you, but and I think partly it's having a child and realizing how much of her life is presumably and hopefully in front of her,
Mm-hmm.
and how much of it I'm not going to be around for.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like, it's just weird. My mortality is something for the first time I'm aware of it. Like, I was aware of it in an abstract sense when I was young and nihilistic,
Yeah.
but now it's like, wow. I mean, I'm
That's a
not
real
going to be
thing.
here forever. How do I want to spend my time?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then I find myself with a limited range of choices, which I'm glad I have some anyway. And I realize that, it's basically it's playing out the string now. Um, Unless something fortunately disastrous happens, extraordinary happens. I'm basically, this is the path I'm going to walk until I kick off.
Well, what are you doing now? Tell me what's going on now.
Well, I've got this business building and installing isolation booths for home recording studios, and I fell into that. Let's see, how did that happen? I had built one for my friend that I was writing the comedy for. I actually built out his garage. I didn't build out a booth, and that went really well. And so I thought, well, I asked around a little bit because I have all these voiceover friends or acquaintances, and a guy called me up who was running a audiobook production facility out of his rented house, and he had built these. They're called DAW booths, DAW, digital audio workstation, DAW booths, plans and instructions, and they're pretty dog shit booths. And I had this idea for a double wall, and having learned carpentry by buying a tool belt and then and then researching whatever projects I had to build. I did the same thing with this booth, and it was pretty complicated. And I underbid it, and if he hadn't given me another extra grand, I would never have been able to start. I would have gone under completely. But it worked, and people raved about it, and then so I started getting inquiries, and it slowly built up. Let's see, I went from his driveway where I assembled that booth and makeshift tables and tools and skill saws and that kind of thing, and started using the backyard of a friend of mine who is a demo producer. She's been in voiceover for a long time. She works for Voice Tracks West, which is where I am now. And that's where I've been for like 3 years, dealing with, a leaky roof, a roof that's too low, slowly building up my tool set, and to where I'm, if I had the business, I could probably do 2 or 3 of these things a week. So yeah, that's been working. Not great. It hasn't been a godsend in the sense that I have all this business and I have all this disposable income now, but it's been building, and my reputation is really good. And I've bit the bullet on a couple of things where things didn't go right, just to make sure that people didn't badmouth me. So yeah. I am going to work every day in my backyard shop, building isolation booths. Did you ever go to my website?
No.
All right, well, I'm going to give the URL. Go to scottsvobooth.com.
Yeah, no, we'll post that on our site. We want people to go to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them on Facebook because you post these great pictures of all these happy people standing outside their isolation booths for voiceover work.
That's my hallmark. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's really cool, and I also really love the blurbs that you write about it. Like they're really funny. They're classic you.
Yeah, I have a good time with it.
Yeah, well, but it shows that's a really you have a really great way of expressing yourself verbally, and it's particularly in writing because it's a one-way communication, so it's really all about the environment you're creating as you write it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So, yeah, I wanted to make the website quirky. You know, I didn't want to be standard issue. I have the greatest stuff in the world, and you should buy it. You know, I want to tweak people's interest and entertain them. And you know, I've heard that before from other people too, and I'm pleased to hear it every time I do. So yeah, so you know, I'm putting skills to work, which is I guess what we all do all the time anyway. And it's been reasonably successful so far, although this last month has sucked canal water. But you know, into every life, a little rain doesn't fall.
well, now I remember when I left off with you in LA, and even before then. Do you remember the Vienna Cafe?
Oh, sure.
We had,
what's
hundreds of breakfasts there.
The Swedish gal.
Yeah, the Swedish gal. Yeah, she was great. And I remember really having a crush on this. I think she was Israeli, this actress, and she ended up dating the Czech guy who ran the place. Remember him?
Yeah.
And then after dating him for 5 months, she sued him for sexual harassment.
Really?
Yeah, it was awful. She was a horrible person. And she told me, she's like, Jason, I'm a terrible person. You don't want to go out with me. And
well, you got fair warning on that.
Well, she also probably saw that she wasn't going to be able to get anything out of me. You know, she could sue me all she wanted. There was nothing to take. And she dated that guy. I remember I had a birthday party and I invited her, and I was really happy to see her walk in, and then he walked in behind her. And then she gave me flowers, and they were the flowers he had given her.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
In front of him?
In front of him, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. She was heartless.
What a rancid twat.
Yeah, she was pretty awful. But anyway, I remember, but that's not the Swedish blonde girl. She was a sweetheart. She was really...
What was her name? I can't remember.
I could not tell you. I was trying to summon it, and I just do not remember. But I remember she came to my Thursday night dinners once or twice, and, she had some boyfriend who didn't appreciate her. I remember that.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Which I'd say is true for a lot of people in LA.
That's when my first hip was in its worst times. So you know, I didn't have any money, didn't have any energy. You know, so and plus I was 20 years older than her, so that never would have happened.
Don't worry, you know that wasn't gonna happen before either of us met her.
Yeah. It was not in the stars.
That was not in the stars. No. But I do remember, I remember building out their back offices and hiring this kid to help me he and his brother were supposed to put in a wood floor for me, and they basically absconded with $2,500, and I was letting him work it off, and then he tried to charge me for his time. I was like, dude, you guys owe me $2,500. He's like, that's my brother, not me. I'm like, you're the same family. I'm sorry. Like, I hired you so you could work off that debt. And then his brother wouldn't let him finish the job. He was a nice kid. His brother was like a gambling addict and really a horrible guy.
He was kind of a husky kid.
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah,
but he was a sweet kid, and his brother was really, his brother was really a piece of shit.
Yeah. Remember the Panchis?
The guys who came.
It was I want to say Cisco, but that's not his name. Oh shit!
It was like Eugenio or something like that.
Yeah, he was a stocky guy and his skinny brother. They were amazing workers, man.
And then his father, right? Because didn't you bring the three of them up to do my drywall?
Maybe his father.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember like losing my temper with him, and he's like, "No te pones enojado." And I realized, like, that was when I realized that just yelling at people wasn't the best way to motivate them.
You were a little crabby when you were running your own business, construction business. And I was thinking to myself, remembering that, now you know what it's like.
Yeah. You were not overly empathetic.
Yeah. Welcome to the mix, asshole.
Yeah. You wanted it?
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. But he was a good guy, and they did a good job, and I remember, that job cost him so much money, and the last $500 he paid me in breakfast. Like he's like, you just have a $500 credit for the restaurant. And,
well, that's not a bad way to get paid.
No, I used it.
Since you're there every day.
Yeah, it wasn't like I wasn't gonna use it. I mean, I did use it,
and it's good breakfast too.
Yeah.
So salmon Benedict was great.
When we were there, I remember you starting your voiceover career.
Well, I don't have a voiceover career, but I started taking lessons. Yeah.
Well, it was a new thing for you, though. You were really excited about it.
Yeah, it's true. I went to a Saturday class. It was just offered to the general public as an introduction to voiceover, and I got the bug the same way I got the bug for theater work, and so I started taking classes with the same guy, and I've been excited about it. I'm still taking classes. I've been a professional student of voiceover for like 20 years. But yeah, that's how I operate. So I get enthusiastic about something and I jump into it with both feet.
Well, I remember when you had a pager and you're like, I never thought the day would come that I'd be one of these annoying Hollywood talents with a pager. But you had one, and you know,
and
you're like, can I borrow your phone? I gotta call this and see if this is an audition or something. So I have that vivid memory, and I have another vivid memory of showing up to breakfast about 20 minutes after you, and they were putting a boot on your truck.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't decide if I should tell you or not, because I didn't want to ruin breakfast.
Oh, really? So you knew? I
couldn't stop them. But they were doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I've seen that happen before. They will not stop. I can't. Oh, hey, let me get the guy. You know.
No, they get the order. They do the order.
Yeah. And I just remember and I remember sitting down having breakfast with you and having this horrible feeling the whole time, being like, I don't know if I should tell him.
You walked around the corner with me. I guess because you were parked behind me. I saw the booth.
Yeah.
That was $700, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned about like I said, the prison of not having enough not to be poor, and that was the thing. You know, I'd get a parking ticket, and I couldn't pay it. Yeah, and then it would double, and then it would another one, and that would double, and you know, they'd finally boot my car. So yeah.
Louis C.K. does a hilarious bit about being broke. It's absolutely one of the funniest things I've ever heard. You know,
can I hear it like on Netflix?
Yeah, you can hear it on YouTube. Just Google Louis C.K. broke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll do that when we're done.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody who might be listening, but I would highly recommend, you know, do a search on YouTube for Louis C.K. broke and laugh your ass off for 15 minutes. It's funny as fuck.
No, I love Louis C.K.
He's so brilliant. The only thing I don't like about watching him, because I think you know this, that I've started doing stand-up, and I'm really into it. And
yeah, that's that. You and stand-up, that came out of the blue. But go ahead.
Well, yeah. So we can talk about that, but I watch him for inspiration. But the problem with watching him, and Judd Apatow said this about him. I was reading Judd Apatow's book. He's like, the problem with Louis C.K. is, I can't watch him anymore because he talks about everything I want to talk about, but he does it better than I'll ever be able to do it.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the experience I'm having with him. And he talks about his kids. I do some of my comedy about Sula, although not really the way he does. But his kids are a little older than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he's a public figure. So he's talking about things that haven't happened for me yet.
Uh-huh.
So by the time they happen, I won't be able to talk about them because he's already done it and will have done it better. And it's just, I mean, it's the greatest and worst thing having him in the world.
Yeah. Well, when you're apprenticing like you are now, when you're learning your shit, yeah, it can get intimidating. But once you hit your stride, you could maybe even do the same material, but you do it your way.
Totally.
Yeah, and then you'll have fans and what's the word I want? A following, and a career.
All those things sound great. Where do you get those?
Yeah, what can I say, man? It's a hidden market. You have to go to this place with a trap door in the door, and you have the password, and and
Yeah, they let you in, maybe.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you got to fight a demon, and then. Though, what the hell got you into stand up?
So I have, for a while now, I have been given the feedback from people in different aspects of my life, whether it's at a dinner party or in a yoga class or a yoga training, or when I have my spiritual teacher in his classes. A lot of people would tell me how funny they think I am. And I take that with a grain of salt. It's nice that people say it, but I've been around people who are truly funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not usually trying to be funny. I don't like it when people try to be funny.
Yeah, when it's
I
forced,
say
it's just
things the way
horrible.
I see them, and oftentimes it catches people off guard, and it's funny. And so, anyway, I had kind of gotten that enough. And a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine here, who's one of my favorite people in Asheville, and he makes me laugh more than almost anyone I've ever met. And 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 together we make each other laugh a lot. And so, and I'm gonna have him on the show too. He's gonna be one of the guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. And he said at the beginning of the summer, since Georgia and I have split up, I've been able to kind of spend more time with friends. I mean,
I take it Georgia is Sula's mom.
Georgia is Sula's mom, yeah.
Okay.
And we split up a couple years ago, and one of the upsides of that has been that I've actually been able to reconnect with people who I just didn't have time for when I was
Yeah, when you're coupled
in a
up,
family.
things go by the board. It just, you have to choose, and nurturing, keeping that thing alive between you takes up the majority of your energy. So it's not unusual.
Yeah, and just time. I mean, you're
Yeah.
spending so much time just playing defense in your life.
I don't have to ask you anymore.
Well, no, I don't mean it. That wasn't a cut on Georgia. I just mean when you have a child and you have a partner and it's just the three of you and you both work.
Yeah.
I mean, you just no time. And we get up in the morning. It's just enough time to get Sula to daycare and now to school. And Georgia has to go to work. And I was working from home just to make it easier. And then I'd work all day and they'd come home and I'd still be working. And dinner wasn't ready. And then we'd, make dinner and do story and snuggle and give her a bath. And before you know it, it's, you woke up at 6 and now it's 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
When are you going to go see any of your friends?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I traveled a lot, and so that was a burden on them. And it wasn't a burden on Sula; it was a burden on Georgia, and it was a source of discomfort for Sula because her dad wasn't around. She didn't necessarily understand it.
Right.
And
traveling for business.
Traveling for business. Yeah. No, I would never. I never left home for pleasure, and didn't go with them. It was the only time I did that was my 40th birthday. I went on a yoga retreat for 4 days or 5 days. I went to LA.
Okay.
But I went out for the retreat and I came home. That was it. That was the only time I did anything personal without the family during that time that I can think of. Georgia might, if she were here, she might debate that, but I'm pretty sure that that's true. There was 6 weeks where I went to China and China closed while I was there. The whole country shut down. And so I went to Thailand for 10 days in the middle of that trip. She was not pleased.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you want me to do? The country's shut down. She's like, how can a country shut down? I said, I don't know, sweetie. It's China. It's not the U.S.
It closed?
I mean, it's an unfathomable idea to an American that a country would close. But
They just didn't let anybody in?
No, it's not that. It's that all the businesses closed. It's a national holiday and everything closes. Except maybe some of the restaurants. I mean, and any of the resorts, and everybody travels somewhere and you can't get anywhere. You can't get anything done. The factories aren't allowed to be open.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when you have a totalitarian regime, you can do that shit. So,
well, it's also, I'm pretty sure, cultural. It's like, did they impose it on them, or was it just something that they would do anyway?
It was imposed because those Chinese factories need to run as much as they can.
Yeah, okay.
So they're not. I mean, the owners are happy to take a break, but they feel no need to give their workers a break. And most of their workers aren't Chinese anyway. Most of them are Cambodian or Burmese, or this is a brief aside, but the labor force in China isn't so much Chinese anymore.
Oh wow.
They outsourced immigrants because the Chinese don't want to do it. They want a middle class life. They don't want to. They don't want to work in a factory
No,
because it's shitty
I understand.
work.
Yeah, it was like in the Middle East when Dubai or the Emirates hire workforces from the Philippines or Malaysia. It's like that whole area of Southeast Asia, and the Indian Ocean are like the Escaneros at Home Depot. It seems to be like the labor pool. That's how they survive.
Yeah, it's oh man, don't get me started on that whole thing. I'm so happy we make everything in America now. It's like I just don't have to deal with that. I don't have to travel there.
Oh, did you make stuff overseas?
Yeah. When I started my yoga egg, I was making it in China for the first 4 years.
Holy shit! You were an outsourcer.
I was a part of the problem.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it was brutal. At first I had somebody dealing with it, and then there were always problems. So I went over there and thought I could solve the problems, and then I came back, and I would go there every year. And the last time I went was to work in the factory side by side with the workers for 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And part of that 6 weeks was the 10 days in Thailand.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Japan for 4 days because there was a yoga fest there, and I had a new distributor and stuff. So I've always, I try to do as much as possible. That's the first time I went to 3 countries while I was in Asia.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I went to China. I was there. I brought a friend because I've been there enough to know that these experiences are genuinely traumatic for me.
Are they?
Because my whole life is riding on this product, and they're not making it right. And my engineer, who's a great guy, but we get in these horrible fights. And it's because he's in a tough spot. He's between me and the factory, and I'm very meticulous, and they're not capable of doing it. And
this is a Chinese guy?
He's born in China, lived his whole life in Hong Kong, but he's an engineer, so he spends 5 or 6 days a week in mainland China, and the other 2 days a week with his family in Hong Kong. It's been that way his whole life.
Wow.
So he's married, he has a kid, and he's only spent, generally speaking, 2 days a week with his wife and child. Wow. And he's a really, really good guy. I mean, I still owe him money. I mean, he's a real gentleman, and he's a really good human being. But we would get in these knockdown, drag out, yelling fights, in front of everybody. It was really terrible. But I was just I just wanted things to be right, and he wanted me to understand the realities of mass production. So,
well, the realities of mass production is you get the quality that you demand and pay for.
Except there wasn't. Okay, so labor
something about the physical nature of what you were working with that prevented him from doing it right.
It was the way we were making it. It ended up too much had to be done. So there was too much had to be done by hand.
Oh, okay.
And his teacher taught him is like the first thing he learned in engineering school was every problem in manufacturing is caused by people. And I guess I'll tell this story. It's kind of a horrible story, but he was trying to get me to understand what I was dealing with. And he said, Jason, you are a trained craftsman. You know how to make this stuff, but these guys they're not craftsmen. They're factory workers from small towns in another country. And, they've been to 8th grade or 7th grade. And even that, it's not like it was a great school they were in.
They're Escaneros.
So these people have no education. And because of the labor laws changing to protect the workers, and of course, as a humanitarian, I'm in favor of that. But what's happened is there's such a abundance of work and such a shortage of workers that the power and control over saying yes or no to a job is now in the hands of the workers.
So it's a seller's market.
It's a seller's market, yeah. And they're unsophisticated and uneducated, and the work that I was having them do was kind of shitty. And so no one really wanted to do it. So finding people to do what I wanted done was really hard. So we could only push so far because the factory would just say no, and then I'm out of business.
Right. No, I understand your position.
It was awful, dude. Yeah. It was so stressful. And so I brought one of my best friends from Asheville, with me, and we spent 6 weeks sleeping in the same room and working together under these horrible conditions. And I basically, he did it for the experience. I paid 100% of his expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Every day was torture. And I mean, and when we finally left, like they were actually doing a pretty good job. Like we had it down, but I would teach them something on day one. And by the end of the day, they understood it. And then day two, I would come in about 3 hours after they had started, and they had invented a brand new problem. And then they had to they got paid by the piece. They had to spend, the next couple hours fixing the problem. And then they got back into business and the things were okay for the rest of the day. Next day, they invent yet another brand new problem. And this went on day after day after day.
Wow.
And I mean, I ended up taking the machine completely.
That's pretty highly skilled labor.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, the skill of creating new problems.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll never forget the phrase you taught me that every job teaches you everything you need to know to do that job, and every job is different.
Yep.
These guys,
that's still the hallmark.
It was the same job.
Well, they made it different. They have invention and imagination.
Yeah,
well,
they totally.
I find that to be the case too.
Sorry,
I mean,
go
just
ahead.
with the Escaneros, the Guatemaltecas, and the Salvadorians, and the Chilangos from Mexico City. You take your chances. Some of these guys are sharp as tacks and are smart and willing to learn, and some of these guys are just pig ignorant and stupid, and you just don't know who you're getting until you deal with it. So, yeah, I can't imagine an immigrant labor force in China from the rest of Asia being able to latch on to what you're talking about and just run with it.
Well, here's what happened. So I created this sizing jig. It was really simple. It's like it's got 4 different size things, and from left to right, they get a little bigger each time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they couldn't make the eggs the same size, so I at least had to organize them to be the same size when it was over.
Right.
And don't even get me started on how ridiculous that is. But so I had 4 different sizes. They were like a 32nd of an inch or 16th of an inch difference in each one. And that meant the smallest egg they could produce could be a 1/4 inch different than the largest egg they would produce. And I took the whole machine apart to get that thing dialed in so it wouldn't happen anymore. But if they ran the egg too fast or ran it against the grinding bit twice, it would get smaller. I mean, it was amazing. Their creativity around fucking this up was unmatched. So I was teaching the foreman, like the main guy. We handed him the jig, handed him a handful of eggs, and said, just figure out how big they are. This is all translated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I watched him struggle with this thing and have a hard time deciding where it goes. And then I showed him, and they translated, and then he still couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then my engineer, he's like, Jason, you're a craftsman, but these guys aren't craftsmen.
They don't have they don't have the muscle memory you do. They don't have the same.
They couldn't even figure out how to put something in a slot and decide what size it was. Or they decide to slam it down and say, oh, yeah, now it fits. I'm like, that's not telling us anything. I didn't say make it fit. I said, what size is it on its own? So he said, so I couldn't get it. I was like, I don't understand. Why can't they figure it out? I just showed him how to do it. He said, Jason, they're not people. They're animals.
Wow.
And I was like, and he was really heated. He's like, they're stupid, okay? They're stupid. They're a pig. They're a dog. They are stupid. They can't figure it out. Never. They never understand. You come here 5 year, 10 year, never understand. You come here last year, next year, they no understand.
Holy shit. Well, that's pretty blatant.
It was really intense. I mean, and he wasn't trying to be as horrible as he was being, but I was not understanding the fact that these guys were never going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my last time in China. I was like, I had already started sourcing U.S. manufacturing, but I couldn't tell them that.
Uh-huh.
And so I just bit my tongue for 6 fucking weeks. It was really hard. I mean, this guy and I were yelling at each other, and and one day I just sent him an email. I said, from now on, if you yell at me, I'm just going to walk away from you. You have to stop yelling. All I'm trying to do is make my product. I'm sorry that I frustrate you. All I'm trying to do is make it right. And he apologized and never yelled at me again.
Oh, good.
Granted, that was pretty near the end. But anyway, so I moved to manufacturing here, and we still have problems, but not the same problems. I mean, the problems we have now are, first world problems. So, literally. So you asked me how I got into comedy.
Where's your plant?
It's in North Carolina.
Okay.
So everything is made in state. 100% of the product, even the foam, is made in North Carolina. So my carbon footprint went from the other half of the world to just across the state. It's amazing.
Excellent.
It's incredible. Yeah. And it's even biodegradable now. We make it out of a biodegradable foam.
Wow.
So it's just amazing what we've accomplished as far as all that goes.
Well, let me interject something. I mean, I deal with immigrant labor here because that's the labor pool. But you got stones, man. You went all the way to China to deal with immigrant labor pool.
I had no idea.
In a different culture, in a different continent, in a different language, and you're not the top of the food chain there. So I mean, that's pretty impressive that you actually survived that.
That they didn't kill me and bury me in a ditch.
Yeah, or that you didn't explode, or that you didn't, go berserk with a machete, and they had to shoot you down like a dog.
That's the reason. In all seriousness, that's why I brought my friend Mark.
Really? Because it would have happened.
Because I had been there 2 or 3 times already. I'd been through this, and I knew I was going for 6 weeks, and I knew I wouldn't survive without him. I needed someone I could speak English to, that I could laugh with, that I could blow off steam and complain to. And Mark's really good at listening. He's just like, he can listen and hear me go totally nuts and not have it affect him at all. So he's a great guy.
Oh, you're smart that way. Yeah. So,
well, I knew it. I mean, it was, it cost me $3,000 to have him there, but the amount of money I would have spent on psychiatric hospitals had I not brought him would have been much more. So I have this friend here who I really like, and he makes me laugh a lot. And his name's Michael, and he not my teacher Michael that I came here to study with. This is just a buddy named Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And he said at the beginning, I was saying, like, when I was in a relationship, we'd have time to spend together. So now when the relationship ended, I started to reconnect with all my friends. And so this guy Michael and I have started spending a lot more time together, which has been great. And he said in a text or an email, he's like, let's do these 3 things over the summer. This is like last May. He said, let's spend more time together. Let's go somewhere cool, even if it's just for the day. And let's find an open mic and each do 5 minutes of stand-up.
Wow.
And so
is he a professional stand-up, or he's
he's just like me, though. He's really fun. I don't mean to say it like this. Like me, he's really funny. He's very funny, and he thinks I'm funny. And when the two of us get together, we have a lot of laughs, and so we share that, and the ability to make other people laugh. We have that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one thing to be funny at dinner when you don't have to. It's another thing to be funny on stage when that's the only thing that's expected of you.
Oh God, dude!
And
people have been telling me that I'm funny for years, and they say you should do stand up. And I said, no, I would if I did one set of stand up, I would be incarcerated for 20 years. I do not have the patience to be heckled. I mean, first off, I can't fight, so even though I would fight, I'd get my ass kicked. And the violence that would ensue would just be hideous. So I stay away from that. And just I freelance making people laugh.
The worst I got heckled was in Chicago. I did an open mic there over Thanksgiving week, and I had done this. I explained I opened up. I'm like, I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, and I told some joke that related to that, and then I was doing my remodel joke, and I meant to say I used to live in LA, but I guess I said I'm from LA because I still consider myself as being from LA. And even though I've been living in Asheville for 11 years, I still think of myself as from LA. And and I got 2/3 of the way through the joke. It's like a 3-part joke,
Right.
And I'm after part 2, and I'm just about to deliver the punchline, and some drunk guy goes, "I thought you said you were from Asheville." And I wish that I'd said, the great thing about hecklers is at least they're listening. you know? um, but instead, like he just caught me. I was so in the zone, and he totally threw me off. And I was like, "What?" And he said, "I thought you said you were from Asheville." I was like, "All right, I guess I live in Asheville, and before I was in Asheville, I lived in LA. Okay, can I get back to my 4 minutes that you've wasted some of now?" And everybody laughed a little bit, and then I told the joke over again, and people only kind of chuckled a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "No, you see, that's a great joke, and everybody would have enjoyed it a lot more had you not interrupted me. But you don't care because this isn't your set." And then the whole room erupted in applause. Like the highlight of my set was me handling this heckler.
Well, you hammered him.
and then when I got off the stage, the MC complimented me on handling what she called an outburst. She didn't use the word heckle. As she's like, let's give it up for Jason handling an outburst, like a professional.
Excellent.
Which was very cool because I'm not a professional. And so that was like, my low light highlight at the same moment.
Well, it's going to happen. So it's how you extricate yourself from it.
Yeah, you have to learn how to deal with it. And I enjoy the audience. So I enjoy the audience work. And I've learned how to like give them a moment, but not let them take over. You can't let them take over.
Uh-huh.
And once in a while you get someone who is going to take over. But, you try not to let it happen. So anyway, Michael challenged me to do this 5 minutes, and my 46th birthday came around, and I decided that as a gift to myself, I was going to do 5 minutes of stand-up. And then I spent 25 hours writing it. I started writing down all my stories. I had been taking notes kind of for the summer. I was writing down my stories, and I ended up telling, a story about Burning Man that I'll never tell again. And I mean, it went well, but I realized, like, because remember you and everybody else on Facebook were like, send us the video. And I was going to post the whole video, and I realized I don't want this story to be out there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was not consistent with my image as a yogi.
Oh.
And so I'm okay having had a complex and multifaceted life, but there are aspects of it that I don't need to be the one putting it on YouTube. So.
Hey, boo-boo. You don't want to get into that picnic basket.
Yeah, exactly. So I did my 5 minutes, and I ended up only doing 3 minutes because I got up there and had total freeze. I couldn't remember anything I went up there to say, and I didn't want to look at my notes. So, which in hindsight I just should have.
Yeah.
But now I know. I take a little list and I put it sort of discreetly on the stool, and I can glance at it more or less, subtly. People still see it, but it's not like walking off stage to look at a giant piece of paper, which would have been my other option.
I've gone to a lot of open mics, like at the Ice House, and people do that. They do that all the time. Some of them are really funny.
Oh, it's totally acceptable, especially in that environment. But I was my first time, and I wanted to just do it, so I did it just for less time. But it didn't bomb. Like, most people really bomb their first time, and sometimes their 50th time. I mean, it's like I've watched good comedians really eat it, and I've watched new people just go 5 minutes without a single laugh.
Oh. And
that was not what happened. Now, granted, I had a warm room. I was filled with my friends, but even the people who didn't know me still, pretty much enjoyed it.
Excellent.
So unfortunately,
I just encouraged you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the worst thing that could have happened because I was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
You sabotaged yourself, dude.
So that's where this whole notion of learning to fail comes from. I mean, that's a comedic. I first heard it in the context of comedy. And that, failing is a huge part of performing, and learning to fail is a huge part of becoming a comedian.
Oh, God. It's like 95% of it.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was the impetus for this podcast, was at least for the title of the podcast.
Excellent.
And then I realized, that's what I love about the phrase is it applies to absolutely everything in life.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So I knew that I could interview people other than comedians, and there's just no one who, there isn't a learning to fail story in there somewhere.
Oh my God. The ones who say there isn't are lying.
Totally. Yeah.
What else?
And that's where all the juice happens,
Well,
so.
When we're practicing reads, I've directed some voiceover classes, and I tell people that there's going to come a point where your hideously uncomfortable doing what you're doing. You're feeling incredibly awkward. And I say that's where that's the source. That's where you learn. That's where you draw new juice out of the world, not of yourself, because you're not doing something that you're comfortable with, and it's that discomfort that gives you the rewards.
Well, it's funny. I just wrote a bit the other night. I performed it on Thursday and or Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a brand new thing. It's brand new territory for me, and I kind of can't believe I'm doing it. And
What is it? What's it about?
I'm not even gonna say. I just like I'm still not ready to admit the fact that I'm writing about this, but but it's really vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, and it's also not true, but it's it makes the audience question me in some ways that I may not want to be questioned. And so it's pretty, you know, it's the bravest thing that I've done so far. And I've been noticing, like, I've always said, like, you know, why do comedians have to do racist humor and sexist humor? And I realized, like, I mean, they don't have to, but you start to want to push that envelope
Uh-huh.
of people's tolerance and sensitivities. You don't want to break it. You don't want to rip it open, but
Right.
you want to just come up against it just the right amount.
It's that.
Louis C.K. is a master of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And it's about yeah, it's about stuff that he's not actually like. when you see him being interviewed, you get a sense of. Do you see him on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee?
I did. It was fantastic.
Yeah, he was just so regular. You know, it's like
Yep.
he's not a tortured comedian. He's not an angst-ridden comedian. He's just a regular guy who knows how to be funny in these really perceptive ways. I mean, he's got depths to him that are pretty astonishing. But
I know.
he doesn't dwell in them. He he lives, you know, he lives in the world, and uses that to make his art. So yeah, so you know, maybe you need to do that once or twice.
Well, I'm starting to push that envelope. I mean, I got pretty big laughs on this thing the other night, and so now I've
Uh-oh.
honed it, and
Well, what kind of comedian doesn't want to say his biggest laugh lines?
well, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I'm starting to take those chances, which is pretty fun.
That's cool. That's really cool. See, I mean,
So.
you're setting yourself up to succeed with that.
Or not.
Well, no, I mean, really, if you don't, you know, you do the same thing over and over again, it disappears. You know, you get no affect out of it. You get no juice out of it. You get no fun out of it. You get maybe you might get a paycheck, but you know, it doesn't. You don't grow. So, giving yourself that challenge, giving yourself that avenue to grow, you're setting yourself up to succeed. I mean, the skills you develop in working that through will serve you really well on other things as well.
Well, that's the. I was gonna say that's the hope, but the hope is I won't have to do other things. Like I really would like my next phase of my life to be spent doing.
No, I'm
stand-up.
talking about in comedy. Yeah.
Oh, in comedy.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
yeah.
I'm assuming you're going to keep going with this, you damn fool.
Oh yeah, I'm going. I'm hooked.
You damn fool.
I plan to ruin what's left of my life.
Well,
So,
go ahead and fritter away your life if that's what you want to do.
So I know you don't have a ton of time left. I want to ask a couple things just to kind of get some other pieces of who you are, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
What is your, if any, what is your sort of spirituality or that piece of your life? I mean, does that exist? Where do you land on that? Has it shifted over the years, or?
I have no organized sense of spirituality. I've experienced moments that are transcendent, that have been mildly transformative in that they've introduced me to themselves, and so I know they exist. I have no hunger to search for any sense of enlightenment. I'm not sure I trust the fact that there is enlightenment. Although, like I said, I've had moments, one time in my shop, I was working at like 2 a.m. after 14 hours of trying to get this thing done. And maybe it was just exhaustion, but I got a really intense sense of being one in the lineage, doing what I was doing, of guys working with materials, making something. I just felt totally at home in it, and I felt buoyed by it, and I felt comforted by it. So that was something you don't get every day. And then I did have a strong one time about 25 years ago. I'd give you the setup to it, but it's a long time. That's the whole 35 years of LA thing.
Okay.
But there was a big change in my circumstances, and I got a sense of the oneness of the universe. To put it bluntly as I can, and that my heart was filled with it. But it doesn't last. It's like you say, you can achieve egolessness, and then your ego taps you on the shoulder and says, "Good job." My secularity, my cynicism, maybe. I do have a cynical streak. At the same time that I'm always hoping for the best. My groundedness in myself takes over again, and that's pretty much my baseline. So, although I was raised in the church, I was raised an Episcopalian, and I thought that I wanted to be a priest until I got to college, and the first foot I stepped on campus was the last time I ever went to church. I mean,
what happened there?
It just disappeared, and I realized when I got into theater that we were high church Episcopalians, so smoke and robes and statues and music, and I realized I liked the theatricality of the liturgy when I started doing theater. That it just became wonderfully apparent to me that I just loved the play acting of it. So that's the last time I ever went to church, and like I say, I have a little spasms of it here and there, but mostly I am common dust. So what do you make of that? Hello?
Well, I mean, I've known you, so I've known you to be sort of atheistic, and when I was going through my spiritual questing, and at one point I invited you to a lecture or something, you were like, "No fucking way, and don't ever talk to me about that shit again."
I'm sure.
I was like, "Oh, how do you really feel?"
I'm sure I was a little more tactful than that.
No, not much. You were really vehement
Yeah.
and like almost offended. Like and granted, I was like I'd found Jesus. It wasn't around Jesus, but that's how I was about it.
Yeah, you were a newbie.
I really had found something that was changing my life, and I felt that it could change everybody else's life. Not that their lives would become like my life, that it would change their lives in their way. Like that was
you
the
wanted
one
to spread the
difference.
love.
I really did. And I was awful about it. And I didn't know I was being awful, but I also felt like the ends will justify the means. They'll thank me, And I mean, it was really just, hearing myself say it, it's like, well, who the fuck, but.
Well, I've had my spells of that too. But I generally back off of people because I don't, that's why I wasn't the greatest salesman in the world. I was good as long as I believed in the product and I could be friendly to people, but I've never been a hard sell guy. And to really do that evangelism correctly, you've got to really pound people. I mean, if you want a conversion rate that's not in the low nothings,
the low zeros,
you really got to hammer folks. And I can't do that.
Well, I wasn't, making a living at it. It was one of those things where I felt so good.
You guys who do it for nothing, you're the worst.
We're the You do it out of pure zeal. There's nothing more egregious than that.
Exactly. What are you going to do with all this zeal? There's all this zeal on me.
I can't sell zeal.
Get your zeal off me. Yeah.
Oh man,
So,
so much.
so what happened? Are you still seeing this guy, or are you still part of that whole?
No,
Did
I
that?
mean, I won't go into detail on it, but we had a pretty big falling out at one point,
Okay,
and it's actually
honestly,
while George.
I,
Pardon me.
actually, if we'd been in touch, the last your last days in L.A., I would have probably made that prediction.
Oh, I think everybody made that prediction pretty openly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any great insight.
No one was surprised. Most people were surprised it took as long as it did. What I will say is I still really live the teachings, and I actually just in the last couple of weeks, things have been so rough that I just started meditating again, and I already can't go the day without meditating. Like, it's so good for me, and I have not done it for 7 years.
Oh wow.
And now that I've started again, I do it twice a day, and it's just a really terrific practice. And I was sitting on the couch, and I was like, how could I had a huge breakfast. I was like, I'm not hungry. I'm not this. I'm not that. And I was like, oh, right, I haven't meditated yet. And then I meditated, and I was like, okay, now the world is organized. It's like,
Yeah.
it just takes everything in my head and gives it a place to settle, so I can,
Yeah.
the gears can start turning
I
again.
understand. Beer does the same
So
thing for
I
me.
still have a tremendous affection, and that's not even the right word, like reverence for what I learned.
Uh-huh.
And
What can you does this have a name? This school of stuff, or is it?
I don't know what it's called anymore.
Is this just this guy's ethical framework cooked up by himself that he was teaching you?
Not exclusively. I mean, he studied with the Maharishi, and he did a lot of TM, and so, but he also did a lot of things. He's had a tremendously varied background, and what his gift is, among other things, because I really do think he's a remarkable being. I mean, I know it sounds like a horrible groupie to say it, but I watched miracles happen in that room and experienced a few of them myself. I mean, he just really understands people, and when he's at his best, I've never met anybody who's like that, you know. And
I buy that. I mean, there's exceptions.
I mean, he's really incredible. So he would bring together ideas in physics and veterinary medicine and music and business, and we did hands-on healing and learned Vedic astrology and palm reading, and he taught all this different stuff, not so that we would do all those things, but so that he could crack open the very hard nut that is our stubborn kind of consciousness. He just, and it was very, very effective. And it really, I remember when I was in it, it really changed me, and for the better. I mean, everybody liked who I was becoming. They just didn't want me to make them come do it too. And
well, that's a lesson to learn. That's always a lesson to learn. It's like, it doesn't have to spread out from you.
I know.
But you want to share it. I mean, that's, you
just want to, it's like a delicious recipe.
Yeah. But I don't like Brussels sprouts.
But these Brussels sprouts, I mean.
Yeah, I'm sure they taste good to you, but they're Brussels sprouts, right?
Yeah, but they're so good for you.
I gave up.
Just eat your damn Brussels sprouts.
I gave up Brussels sprouts for Lent 40 years ago.
11 years ago. Yeah, so, I mean, what was interesting is, and I just kind of realized this the other day, when Georgia was pregnant, that was around the time that we sort of had our parting of the ways, and I still meditate. I kept up my practice for a while, and then when Sula was born, it just became impossible to do everything, and I started doing yoga more seriously because I was really starting to try to make it with the egg, and so I started practicing all the time, and I had to give something up, and the meditation was the thing that I let go of, and then then now George and I have split up, and it's been a little rough lately in a couple different ways, and
How long have you been split up?
2 years.
Okay.
And
how long were you together?
So we were together for 6 years.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And not including the time that she was pregnant, because we weren't really together while she was pregnant.
Oh, thereby hangs a tale.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy story. But I mean, I knew I wanted to live with my daughter, and George was a terrific human being, and she really cared about me, and we tried. I think we really tried, and she really tried. and it just, it wasn't there. And when it was time, and when we were able to let it go with relative grace, we did.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like for the most part, we've done a good job with it. It's, we every once in a while we go through a little eruption phase of things being awful because, we're not in a relationship. We don't want to be in one, but we still have to deal with each other every day. As I say, we still have all the same fights, but none of them make up sex.
Ah. Does she see Sula? Is she see Sula much?
We have split custody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We 50-50 custody. Yeah.
How?
And which was really, really hard for her at first. It wasn't as hard for me because I'm used to going away and coming back, so I'm used to having time away from Sula.
Right.
But then it became like I would go into a full-on depression every time I would give Sula back to her. And I had to I started planning for it. I still kind of plan for it because now I have Sula. Now we're a full 7 days on, 7 days off. It's much easier and we're all happier. And but we make the switch on Wednesdays. Usually at school, I drop her off in the morning. Her mom picks her up. There's no sense of like the handoff. The handoff is never a good thing. So
right.
There's no handoff. There's just, she gets dropped off by one parent, picked up by the other. She knows it's happening. We all know it's happening.
Well, kids
organize
are
the next
really
20.
Flexible. They can make so long as it's not difficult at home. This kind of arrangement a kid can adapt to quite easily.
Yeah, they really need it to be consistent.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't like it when she has to say, "Where am I going today?" Or it's really nice if it's consistent, and for the most part it is. But this always changes. I mean, this coming week, Georgia's going out of town. I'm gonna get her a day early. It's like, and I'll keep her a day longer, and then she'll only be with her mom for a day, and then I'm taking her out of town for 4 days. So it just works out that I'm gonna have her for most of the next 2 weeks. And
were you guys married?
We never married. No.
So this is just an agreement between yourselves.
Yeah,
it's not court ordered. I'm just wondering.
No, it's not court ordered.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you
when
can
it
work
comes
out.
to Sula, we both really do our best to put her first. And sometimes we fail, but for the most part, we succeed.
Well, that's good for you. That would have been good for me, probably, if I had ever wanted a kid. I realize one of the things that works against me in life is that I am insular. I'm kind of like an oyster. Comes from being an only child with a single parent for a long time, and then walling myself off from the new family. So yeah, that would have been good for me if I'd taken the plunge, I think. But it's great that you did it, because I think that's really good for you.
Yeah, it's been really good for me. It's been really good for me. Sula's by far, she's the love of my life.
Sweet.
And it's really
smart ass too.
Oh my God.
Where'd she get that, from you or from her mama, or just as an adaptation?
I certainly hope she gets it from me. I mean, I take great pride in the idea that she gets it from me. I really nurture those kinds of conversations with her. I mean, I play with her in a way that has kind of taught her how to be
fresh.
A little bit irreverent, but not rude. Like, I've really worked with her and continue to work with her on the difference between being funny and clever and being rude.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, rude's not okay, but funny and clever, that's great. If you can keep it on the funny and clever side, you'll have a lot of friends. If you just are rude, that's not going to help you.
Yeah.
And so it's really helping her refine that, and she's getting better and better at it, as you can see by the Sula Seds. I mean, she just comes out with stuff that's
she's only
really
8
outrageous.
too, and she sounds like she's 14, 15.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, she watches TV shows that are sometimes have kids who are, it's probably directed for kids who are a little older. So I kind of need that. I need to bring her back to, Dora the Explorer, so she's just more good-natured. But she's really she really puts me through my paces.
Fantastic. Good for you.
So, yeah.
A friend of mine just had his first kid at the age of 51.
Wow.
Yeah. And he's taken to it like a duck to water. And the guy's really, really healthy, so it's not like he's not like in my shape, which would have really put him through his paces. And it was kind of an oops baby, but they're going crazy for her.
Well, a lot of babies are oops babies. I think if babies were only born when they were planned, that this world overpopulation would not be an issue.
Oh, no. It's just Mother Nature throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
a lot of it's sticking.
Yeah, a lot. Yep. But, it's one of those things that when it happens, I mean, it's a major adjustment. It's the biggest adjustment I've ever had to make.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also been the best thing ever.
Well, cool.
So,
well, it better be, because if it's the worst thing ever, then Sula's in trouble.
Well, that's true, but for a lot of people, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she ruined my life in the best way imaginable.
Creative destruction.
Yeah, I mean, she just, there was nothing about my life that was moving in the direction of having a child, except for having gotten this house. I mean, I got this house with the idea of having a family.
Oh, really? So that was...
It's a big house, and I envisioned having a family in this house one day, and she was conceived in this house, and, we all lived together in this house for 6 years, and the family broke up in this house, and I'm kind of ready to give up this house.
Too many memories?
Enough. It's enough already. Like, I'm kind of stagnant here. I've accumulated way too much stuff, and I won't really get rid of it unless I have to, because I have so much else to do. But if getting rid of it becomes a necessity, then I will get rid of it. So I almost have to move just to get rid of all this stuff I don't need.
Yeah, you're molting.
So yeah, exactly. I need to cocoon, and I got to get this crap out of the...
You just need to unhook the skin from your lower jaw and wriggle out of it. Well, listen, man, my voice is failing, so I think I got to sign off.
All right, well, this was terrific. I really appreciate you doing it.
It's a lot of fun.
It's great to reconnect with you. It's great to reminisce. We'll have to,
Well, I'm going to bring some beers to the next one.
We'll have to do an addendum and add the Thursday night dinners, because that in and of itself was
that was a good time. That was a bright spot in that struggle period, because everything was going on. My hip was bad. I wasn't working. Blah 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 blah. But I really dug those breakfasts, and I really dug the Thursday night dinners. I got to hang out with 20-somethings and enjoy myself. So yeah, I was grateful for those.
Oh, they enjoyed you. I mean, they ask about you every now and then. Sabrina asks whatever happened to that guy, and
Oh, we're Facebook friends. She never posts anything for me.
Well, I mean,
she lives in New York, right?
Yeah, New York and L.A., and then she travels for work.
Yeah, I look at her picture every day on Facebook when she posts, and I don't remember her. It's funny. It's like beautiful woman.
Yeah, it's been a while, man. I mean, it's been 15 years since you would have seen her.
Yeah. Was she in the and bowling? God, bowling was fantastic.
Bowling. Yep.
Was she in bowling?
Yeah, she would go bowling once in a while.
Okay.
But Thursday night dinner, she is the other founding member. She and I started that whole thing.
Oh.
It was Wednesdays, and we'd watch Melrose Place, and that lasted Melrose Place or one of those, and that lasted thankfully only about four episodes, and then we moved it to Thursdays for Seinfeld and Friends, and then we invited somebody else, and it grew organically. And for the last episode of Seinfeld, there were 45 people in my house.
Oh wow! I remember cooking for you. I remember it was a near disaster. I was making these potato ravioli, garlic mashed potato ravioli, and I didn't separate them, and it was like a blazing, humid summer, and they just welded together.
So it was a lasagna.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it ended up being.
I remembered you making lasagna, so now I know what actually happened.
That's what actually happened. And when your buddy said, "Why don't you just put it in the oven?" I said, "Oh, lifesaver." And it turned out great. It was really tasty.
Yeah, it was delicious. Yeah.
Well,
all right, man.
All right.
Well, lots of love to you, and it's very meaningful to me to have reconnected and kind of healed whatever happened. And
who said it healed?
It healed for me. You're on your own. I feel healed, and it's my podcast. So
much for your evangelism.
I never said I achieved enlightenment. I just said I was enjoying the pursuit. Man, that was great. I had so much fun talking to Scott Peterson. I feel like the last many years of living without his friendship have been severely lacking. He's smart, he's funny, and he has an uncanny way of making me feel both better and worse about myself at the same time. Not a lot of people can do that. If you like what you heard, please visit our website. Use our Amazon portal and rate us on iTunes. Make sure you tell your friends about us, and if you feel so inclined, please consider making a donation on our donation page. That way, we can keep failing for years.